Welcome, returning in new friends of Dice Never Lie. My name is Jared. I'll be your dungeon or lore master, Marathustra. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you like what you hear, never hesitate to like and subscribe. We stream live on Twitch, usually uploading to YouTube within 2 to 3 days of recording. Today, we will be stepping into the world of Prema, the city of Tolis, City by the Spire. This is a West March campaign. Often we have a loose conversation while we get into character. The improvisation starts right away while we find out where we are in this living world. Today we are joining Davros DeMarquis as he searches for his missing son Dalton. Inside of the city of Tolis, this is the Twin Star Marauders. When you guys captured that cook and interrogated him, did you get those? I think it should be 4 names.
Those I did see, yeah.
Gotcha. So the group was the Enin, who was essentially the group of kind of slavers who would have had Dalton, or that person would have worked for at some point when he saw Dalton. Um, you would have gotten the name of scouts, guides, and porters, which is a shop in the Undercity. The name of the person who runs that shop, who I have to click a button real quick. Trevin or Rem. So those are 3 of the names. And then I think the 4th name that you got was actually one of the Enin, which I want to say is Rastor.
It looks like Nastris.
That's just that. Okay, word. Yeah, that sounds right. So those are the 4 kind of takeaways there. Chris kind of stuck with that and kind of continued on because, again, that's kind of been his thread with Malchin even prior to Dalton getting captured. Um, that's one of those things where, in the long run, part of what West Marches will often be is not necessarily that a quest line is yours so much that it is actually kind of the groups. So he did kind of continue on. It makes things a little bit more important to him as he actually now kind of knows somebody involved more than just being kind of a um, close affiliate or somebody who's against the idea. But he kind of continued with those threads into last week. Went back into the Undercity. He would eventually, or realistically, I had him pick up an NPC from the guild and basically went off kind of searching without you that day. He actually picked up a barbarian, so it's actually quite close to having Davros with him as far as the sidekick goes. But he kind of continued on with those things, investigated scouts, guides, and porters, and then eventually got some information, this and that, and eventually joined the Delvers Guild and paid his dues there, paid for some information, which I'll go into in a second here about Dalton, and then went and killed some rats. So on some level, his session is pretty closely entwined with what I figured we might do with Davros. But I wanted to at least give you a little bit of that information because it would be something, theoretically, the guild as it is kind of meant to be the place where you guys go to drink and socialize just as much as you would have gone to other places too. So maybe Davros is avoiding the steel. The Iron Guild is one of the biggest guilds in the guildsman district, just because they basically control all of the metal guilds. But when you're looking for your son, these are the people who are also partially looking for him as well. So you're almost going there every night for rumors. So that's part of why I wanted to kind of go over that idea.
Gotcha. Okay, yep. Makes sense.
So one thing that did happen was I Chris spent 20 gold paying for essentially not necessarily information, but paying for Trevinor to kind of search out information regarding Dalton. Part of that conversation was not necessarily I can search for someone. Trevenor was pretty close, playing things close to the sleeve kind of thing, where he's like, "Look, I have scouts, I have guides, and I have porters. If you need to hire any of those things, I can handle that for you." And then like when it kind of came up that he was looking for slavers, it was like, if you're not looking to buy a slave, I don't know how to help you. Like, if you wanted to buy a slave, I could help you. And it was kind of one of those underhanded things where it's like, don't mess with our money, but if you're looking to buy a slave, wink wink, I can start to take you through the process of doing that. So essentially, Mauchin started the flow of searching for a slave to get his in, and in particular, the description is going to match Dalton. So it is effectively that he is trying to find out like where Dalton is to see if he can purchase him as a slave. And
Nope. Sorry. Go ahead.
So, and part of the warning was it's like, look, if you're trying to mess with like the money that these people are making, you're ruffling feathers that you don't know what animal they're attached to. It was kind of one of those warnings, like this is bigger than you, and you're gonna get yourself killed if you go into something like this. So that's kind of like where some of that like went about. But he ended up spending like 25 gold on that, as he paid for like the information to search out Dalton, just as much as he paid 5 gold like for shadow sending to essentially bring in the information back to the Crooked Skinner. And part of how shadow sending works is like he almost had it sent to his tavern where he works. And I was like, you have it sent to the tavern. Shadow sending is going to bring the information to the tavern and say the message to the first thing it encounters that's where it's meant to go. So it's one of those things where it was like, this is where I'm going to butt in and say, send it to the Crooked Skinner. At least then everybody's a guild member. Otherwise, you have no idea when the information's going to come. It might come during the peak of business when there's like 50 sailors in that place, and it's the first sailor who's close enough to the address is going to hear about Dalton and just be like, all right, who the fuck's Dalton? And continue drinking. So he kind of like paid like that gold. We'll eventually have information coming in about Dalton on that level. And that's part of where we could potentially move forward with that storyline. But one of the other things is like the sword that technically the two of you found together. I allowed him to sell it. Normally, I would try to postpone for the two of you to play together so we could decide what it was. But I also told him, as far as things go, you're wealthy enough, um, that depending on how you feel about things, we could certainly make things right by you. Effectively, that he spent 25 gold searching for Dalton and then also sold that sword for, I think he got 200 gold for it. But I was curious kind of how you felt about those two things. Would you repay him any money, simply speaking about the 25 gold? And then when he sells the sword, do you want any money in return?
Yeah. So I think yeah. So he definitely would have paid him back. Um, for the information. So probably like the full 25, and I think he would not have asked for any share of the gold of the coin um, from the sword. Basically considered like that was kind of that's Malch can keep that as his share for going with him into the Undercity, and um, yeah, so he would not be looking for um, any share of that.
So, so for now, what I'm going to say is I'm going to leave it as it is, where effectively he paid for the information on Dalton, and he got the full share of selling the sword. When you meet up with Mountain, the next time you meet up with him, you are welcome to role play, like talking about all of this for one, but also giving him that 25 gold. But as far as I'm concerned, I think having that be an equal trade is more than generous on your part, anyways. So I'm not going to alter anything and just kind of leave it how it is, where he got that 200 gold, which is effectively 25 repays him back, 175 is his profit. Almost as if he took, what is that, like 7 parts of the eighth.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. And then yeah, if we next time we play, yeah, I'll kind of see how that goes. I guess the other thing is Dalton might have, or not Dalton, Davros. Uh, I think he had picked up the bottle of wine. Um, he probably would have, because he's not knowing, how much value it is, and not really having an inkling that it might be like super um, valuable. Might have, the next time he had gone back to the Crooked Skinner, might have just like essentially like kind of like pulled it out to show it to, I guess, Maybell, the bartender, and been like, like this, worth anything, and maybe
Yeah, what did I tell you the bottle of wine was? How much did I like just give you a value?
I believe he said it was worth 350.
Is that the one that you opened, or is that the one that you picked up?
No, so
Do
this
you
is
have that?
the second one that he picked up. The one that he opened, that basically he drank, or like he melched and drank.
Okay, I was thinking that's the one that I valued higher, but um, that's perfectly fine by me. I would say, you're in game now. Roll a d20 for me. Let's see, what. Oh man, what is it? Maybell thinks when she sees it.
Right, 9.
Yeah, so I'd say, well, I don't normally have a need for wine, but this does seem to be a finer vintage. I can do 175 gold for you.
I think Dalton would, sorry, Davros, he would kind of raise his eyebrows and kind of maybe like glance at the bottle, then glance at Maybell, and sold.
So while you're like kind of like listening to this, and kind of waiting for the response, man, that die can't roll any slower. You kind of like have yeah, seven's pretty bad. You kind of have Kalimtas kind of like look over the edge of the tavern and kind of like look down at Maybell and is like, is that some fine wine that I hear you speaking of? And Maybell kind of like pass up like, it is indeed. It's one of the Nared's vintages. And maybe pass on. God, I can't remember what year it is in Tolis, but I feel like it's like the 1300s. But they kind of like pass on like maybe it's like a 60-year-old vintage. Um, and Glimtoss will be like, yeah, that sounds delightful. When you come up shortly here with a spot of lunch for me, bring the bottle. Um, and I'm just gonna have him probably pop it pretty quickly here. And enjoy some wine, as this is probably not the type of thing that would often arrive inside of the Warrens. Um, yeah, any other thoughts?
Um, oh, I guess I should roll for hit points, right? I did see Davros has made it to level 2.
Yeah, yeah, you are level 2. I wanted to put a few ideas out there. And this is something that I do have to kind of approach everybody. So we'll do it kind of both ways where we continue with the old style of doing it. I'm actually kind of tempted to adopt a new way of doing hit points. I am considering every time you long rest, you roll your hit dice, and that is what you have that day. So if you go to sleep, you might roll, and we'll stick to the same ideas that ones get re-rolled. So like when you're level 2, your minimum hit dice for a day could be basically 4, as if you rolled two twos, and then your constitution modifier. That's your minimum hit dice. Or at level 2, you could roll barbarian is 2d12, so you could have 24 plus your constitution. And if you like wake up and you roll two twos, that's a day you wake up and you feel like shit. Be cautious. If you wake up and you roll those two 12s, that's a day you wake up and you feel like a literal embodiment of a god. I'm tempted to do that. I do kind of want to talk to people about it before I just say it. But it is one thing that I want to consider because I kind of understand it sucks sometimes when you do like rolling 4 hit points and you get a shit roll. Um, but yeah, let me bring up the characters sheet. But I assume you're doing another barbarian.
Yeah, yeah. I like that idea. So I'm willing to try that out today if you want.
Gotcha. So let's start with just doing a normal hit die, as if we're doing it the other way. And then I'll let you roll when we actually like. I'm kind of thinking this is still um like the between week kind of thing. Like this is still kind of downtime because I want to kind of get an idea for what we'll be doing. But um I'll set that up for your like hit dice rolled in case we don't kind of move forward. Um so I also kind of changed some things that I went over with Chris. I was trying to simplify some of the homebrews that I was doing. So let me add that real quick for you. What is your con? Is 4? So that's another 11. So you're going to be at 23 hit points.
Yep, that's what I got.
I did that wrong though, because I put 16 hit points rolled, and you have
Yeah, so
plus
it'd be
8.
15 rolled, like 8 and a 7.
Okay, I had you as a 9. Alrighty. Yeah. So if you want to do 2d12 here, we can see like what like today if you did that style, you'd basically have 2d12 plus 8. Part of why I like this style is it would allow me to stop tracking people's hit points. I don't have to worry about people like cheating their hit dice rolled because every single day you would start fresh.
Right. Okay, there we go. All right. So it's 9 plus 8, so it'll be 17 for the day.
Yeah, I mean that sucks when you roll basically lower than what I expected. Um, but it's an idea. We can kind of like play it on the fly and see how it goes. There was another style of doing it. I wonder if I put it into the homebrew. Um, doesn't look like it. So one of the other things that I wanted to bring up, and it might take a moment. I don't know how easy it will be for you to grasp, but are you familiar essentially with what your proficiency does for things that you are proficient in? Like at level 2, you basically have a +2 to anything that you're proficient in, right?
Right. Yeah, with proficiency bonus and all that. Yep.
So, getting away from D&D Beyond, I've been super excited for this for a while, but I want to offer people the chance, and this is much more you can try it out, but then you need to make a decision. But I want to use proficiency dice. Instead of getting a hard proficiency number, you will basically get like when your proficiency is a 2, you can roll a d4, and that goes with anything you're doing. When you would normally have that proficiency, you can roll a d4 instead of getting that hard proficiency. So you make an attack with your hammer, it's a d20 and a d4, and that will tell you, your strength modifier plus the d4 plus the d20. That's your roll to hit. And it kind of goes with everything. If you're trying to pick a lock and you're proficient in thieves' tools, it's that d20 plus a d4 plus dexterity. So it's just a different way to roll more dice. And one of the things about how proficiency dice work is essentially the average minus a half a percentage, like the average minus one half is what your proficiency would be. So when you're rolling the dice, you actually have a higher proficiency bonus, but you can also roll lower when probability takes it that direction.
Right. Yeah, no, I like that idea too. Yeah. So like so it'd be like a D4, and then when proficiency bonus goes to +3, D6, then D8, D10. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is if you wanted to make D&D Beyond represent things properly, you would have to go inside and kind of edit things away to change like your hit DC, to change it to say, like I'm looking at Mouchin still, but like he's got a +5 with his bow, but a +3 for his damage. You just kind of like look at your damage almost, or just make sure to remove your proficiency bonus from your like to hits. or you can go in there and edit it and actually reduce the proficiency bonus and get rid of it like that. Um, but it's one of those things where, in the long run, once you're prepared for it, it's pretty simple to correct into your character sheet. But it's something that I want to offer to people because, one, I love rolling dice. I think it's way more fun to roll more dice.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. And yeah, it's simple enough to just subtract two and then add a d4 instead. I don't foresee any issues with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and proficiency sticks for so long. It's one of those things like you should get used to it pretty quickly here. It is something to get used to, but it should connect the dots pretty quickly. Um, Massive damage is something I've talked about, or I haven't talked about, but I've had in my homebrew stuff for a while. And I want to start like making more of a point to use it. But if something takes 50% of its maximum health, in damage in like a single hit, you start to go into system shock. If you take over 50% of your health and you go to 0 hit points, you're going to get a lingering injury. And that kind of goes both ways for players as well as like essentially creatures that are like NPC style big bads, like reoccurring bad guys. But I wanted to kind of bring attention to that. Again, this stuff's in the homebrew in the Discord, but just as before we actually jump in, I wanted to bring attention to it again. Um, the pass through attack is when you attack, especially at low level. This is huge. When you attack something that is at full hit point, if you think you can kill something from full hit points to 0, like the pass through is one of those things that makes you not want to attack the creature that is at the lowest hit points. So like a tiny little goblin or something with 1 or 2 hit points, you can hit it, do 100% of its life, and pass through and hit the next thing with any of the over damage that you would have. So if you attack something like a Sturge with 2 hit points, do 7 damage, and that Sturge was at 100% health, you're going to do 5 damage to the next thing that's closest to, like that's in melee essentially with you. So if there's 2 Sturges in front of you, you might pass through and kill, with 7 damage, you could kill both of those Sturges. If there's three, you could potentially kill three and do another damage to a fourth Sturge. Um, Mainly because they are so low in hit points, but pass through attacks is one of the things that I wanted to bring up, but it's only when something goes from 100% health to 0 health.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's kind of like the what's that? The sweeping attacker. There's some fighter maneuver or something. I think that is
Ooh, I'll
similar.
have to look into that because I don't want to steal from the fighter.
I don't think the fighter is limited to like full. I think it's like if there's like a second thing, and it might cost a maneuver die or something. I
Okay.
feel like there's something like that.
That would be fine with because that's part of why like I switched to the idea of having like the bonus action for a single potion on your belt is so it doesn't like impede the fact that the thief rogue gets to use potions like as a bonus action. But the thief rogue, it's like, okay, I've got a backpack full of potions that I can use. But like everybody else, you get that one. So yeah, I would be fine with that if it's, especially if theirs is not limited to it has to be at 100. Um, but that's precisely why, like, I would hate to give everybody a free ability that takes away from the fighter, especially that it's also something that they have to use a resource for.
So it's sweeping attack. So when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can spend a superiority die, attempt to damage another creature with the same attack that's within 5 feet and within your reach. If the original attack roll would hit the second creature, then it takes damage equal to the number you roll on the superiority die. So essentially, they could have that in addition to um uh this um this one that you're talking about.
Yeah, the pass through.
And you said that's only if um it goes
Yeah,
from
so
100% to 0%, or if it's already damaged, it passes through as well.
no, if it's already damaged, it's not going to do the pass through.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
basically a different kind of crit that almost falls into like the decapitation zone of saying like a 20 with a Oh, I can't think of the sword from Alice in Wonderland. Damn. But yeah, it's almost like a different kind of like decapitation style of crit, where it just says if the creature's at 100 and you deal 100% of its hit points, and you have extra damage, that extra damage is going to sink into the next creature.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, you thinking of the Vorpal sword?
Yeah, Vorpal Sword. Yep, the Vorpal Sword in D&D is one of those things where it's just like it's a decapitation. I think it decapitates on a 19 or 20, but
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've never actually seen one come up in use, but I've definitely heard about them.
it's ungodly powerful. It's one of those things where, especially in fifth edition, you really shouldn't get to see one until it's super high level. I've passed out like decapitating axes at low level, but just on a crit. It doesn't have all of the other things that the Vorpal does. And even that's stupid powerful because you can just really, really big fights all of a sudden end because there's a single crit. I just added it, but I'm going to try using flanking, but with a +2 flanking. It doesn't actually give advantage, it's just a plus to hit. Um, and that, again, all of these things technically creatures get them just as much as other players. But those are some of the things that I've been kind of like playing around with and kind of changed. I don't think character creation anything really changed with you, but I got rid of the idea of doing character creation stipulations. I really don't care. It feels way too much like babysitting. And in the long run, I wanted to keep stuff simple. So if you wanted to do somebody different, I know you had talked about making another character. Um, but one, I want to remind you, like, we're potentially close to you having a chance to save Dalton. But even then, you would still have two level 2 characters. So um, I wouldn't be surprised if you end up with a few characters by the time uh, things kind of move forward here.
Yeah. I'll. Yeah. Obviously, I'll keep going with Davros today, but yeah, at some point I do want to create a. And I think because I think Dalton was first level when he was captured. So um,
Yeah, when you got through that point, I had him at 400 experience when he got captured. So
oh,
you
gotcha.
had
Okay.
leveled in that house and then kept going. And that was kind of the thing is it was like if you had rested, he would have leveled. But because you didn't, you kind of kept pushing forward. And that's kind of the odd part of it is Dalton is technically level 2. Um, and it's just a question of like what it means to have gotten captured. Do we rob him of that experience? It feels weird to say yes. Um, but in the long run, you were like well over it too. Like I don't remember when you hit like 300, but 300 is the break point. I just feel like we had you just below 300 when you started that session, and you got, 120 experience like in that session.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So probably we'll create another first level kind of new character. I just haven't. I don't have. Haven't decided what I want to do yet. I'm thinking maybe I want to try one of like the more uh social builds, like a mastermind rogue or something like that. Although I mean Dalton's a bard, so it's kind of a social build too. But
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely welcome to, but I would say still keep in mind, I don't know when I need to force people to like play different levels, but I definitely think ones and twos are perfectly acceptable together. Um, I think that it's probably more important to question when it's like a level 1 and a level 3 character than 1 and 2, you know?
yeah, 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 and that also with like the rolling hit dice thing, um, and like the proficiency dice, right? So there's I feel like it'll I mean have to see it in practice, but I feel like that'll make it like more likely that a level 1 and level 2 can kind of if a level 2 could roll low and a level 1 can roll high, that kind of evens them out a little bit, so there's even less of a kind of gap between them.
Yeah, yeah. It should. I'm hoping it plays out well, because one of the other things is I was considering just doing the full hit dice for level 1, I really like the low levels being dangerous. But at the same time, I also really want this group to actually move forward and have leveled characters because it's really difficult to make level one encounters.
Yeah, yeah,
Like Chris is like going after some rats, and we have him like fight some rats, and was like, you want to move forward or you want to bug out after like the one little combat? And it's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna bug out. And it's like, oh, you didn't even really get hit. He's like, oh, I got hit for 4, so now I'm down to 6 hit points. And it's like, all right, yeah, touche. Like all of a sudden you're almost dead because you took like one attack out of like 50 attacks against him. One sinks in, and it's just like, yep, I'm almost dead.
yep, yeah. I mean, well, yeah. Dalton had what 5 hit points level one, so yeah,
I mean, that was stupid difficult to play around with is like the bard. I mean, it's fun, but it's one of those things where it definitely that was part of why I was like, yeah, I'm like looking at I'm like studying Call of Cthulhu to play D&D versus Dalton because I was trying to make it more of a horror investigation than throwing creatures at you. Because I feel like that's what level 1 through 3 should be, is when you actually have like the fear of death in you.
yeah, yeah. And that's like, yeah. I mean, you can almost do it as like a funnel kind of thing. Like just have a whole bunch of characters ready to go, and know that like you might lose like 80% or 90% of your rolled characters for level one or something.
Yeah, that's one part of DCC. Yeah, Dungeon DCC that I really like is like the meat grinder for like 0 to 1. Just this idea, like, don't think about this as your character yet. Like, think about this as like the meat grinder to get to like your actual class of like level 3, like your subclass. That's when I want you to actually know who your character is. I feel like that would be such a better way to create characters, is like if you create them over the levels of 0, 1, 2, 3, and by the time you get to choose your subclass at level 3, then let's pretend this is a real character who you actually hope to like learn and get to play. Because other than that, like you're gonna die at any time.
Yeah, and I think in DCC technically like you just everything gets rolled randomly. So like you just roll a like your peasant like profession, and you do like I don't know, you get like 4 or 5 characters,
That's
and
why I
then
like it so much more, is because you're not putting the time into thinking of this character. You're just playing somebody. And if they end up being the one who like lives through the gauntlet, then you start to like create backstory for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely be. I at some point I'd like to definitely try out that system. So I hear definitely interesting. And I have the I got the book, the core rule book. I haven't actually looked through it too much yet, but
Read through most of it, but one of the problems with reading rule books is like there's a lot of cool stuff to pick up, but in the long run, like I feel like that's one of the things where I like to play through new homebrew is from reading some of these books. But in the long run, like it goes like in and out unless you're using it. Like
yeah,
Call of
yeah.
Cthulhu, I've prepared that so many times and I retain little bits of it, but without actually getting to play it. I mean, when we played, I couldn't believe how often I was calling for luck rolls just because like I'm just not that prepared for like what it calls skills.
Well, there's a lot of them too for Call of Cthulhu, a lot more than there is for D&D.
Yeah, I actually ordered uh the keeper screen because of that, and it like came in like 2 days after we ran that session. After like canceling it from Christmas, or if not from Christmas, from Halloween, like when it actually arrived was like 2 days after that. I'm like, of course, now that I probably won't run Call of Cthulhu for like 8 months, it arrives. But I did get it for the next time I play because that was one of the things that the actual DM screen, one of the most useful pages that I actually like, and I hate where it's positioned on the official one, is the skills and their associated abilities. Like learning that, having that in front of me is the whole point for having the DM screen, in my opinion.
Yeah, that, and I feel like conditions. I can never keep all the conditions straight. Like, what's like the difference between um, like grappled, restrained, blah blah blah. So
Conditions, I feel like you pick up pretty quickly when you actually have to like deal with them, like as a DM deals with them instead of as a player. The problem that I do have with conditions and why I like them on the screen is how often a condition imposes another condition and you get like the chain of conditions.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think those are the big things that I wanted to kind of treat with to keep in mind the idea that like basically what was it? You rolled 7 so you could put your hit points at 15 for the day. Um and just manually do that. I would say in the long run you'll probably never mess with that like hit points rolled screen. Um Unless you want to just set it at that number. I feel like that might be a solid way to do it. Is continue to like set the hit points rolled, what you did, and then for this day you've got that 15, and we'll eventually decide what the campaign's at. Um, but we've got flanking, we've got the cut through, the massive damage, proficiency dice, those kind of different styles of like homebrew to kind of mix into things, just to kind of keep those in mind. And then I think we're kind of set on you've got your week of work in between now and then, or then and now. If you had anything downtime wise that you wanted to do, I would say like selling the bottle of wine is one of those things. What else did we just do?
I think that was pretty. And then you went over what kind of Malshin had done last time. So you would have spent some time probably, uh, you know, discussing with Malshin and kind of getting up to speed on that stuff.
Gotcha. So maybe also Malchin might have time to sell you on the idea of the Delvers Guild. That's another thing, kind of out of character. I think I probably should have had everybody be members of the Delvers Guild and gotten rid of the idea of the Twin Star Marauders. But I think the overall like aim should be to get everybody inside of the Delvers Guild. But basically, it's 20 gold to join for the year. You have access to the Delvers Guild library. If you spend 10 gold to join for the year as an associate Delver, when you go to the library, you have to pay a 1 gold entry fee for the day. You can still look up things, but you kind of go through an intermediary. Versus if you join at the full rank of guildsman, you basically can walk through the library yourself and search for maps. Anybody who makes maps while we go through things can sell maps to the guild for 10 gold. Obviously, again, or you can copy maps. There was a price associated with the actual copying of them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think Davros definitely would. He's got enough coin that he can definitely afford that 20 gold. So I think he would. Yeah, he would have no reason not to go ahead and join the Delver Guild. So he could have done that also during this week at some point.
Yeah, I'm going to set it up as it's just like for a hard the year 2023. That's one of the other ideas of having it as a West March is effectively Chris was playing on like Lothian's Day, like the first of the year. So he basically joined with the full year in mind, and I'll let you do the same thing where you're joining, or not let you. Everybody's going to join for the actual same year, and that way I don't have to keep track of it in the same way. But like the middle rank is the guildsman. You have access to guild information, 10% discount at Ebert's Outfitters. Uh, you have access to the guild library, the guild map room, and way stations. The way stations are perhaps the biggest reason to actually make sure to up to spend that because those are the places where if you do run into trouble, the guild has these things set up, and they're basically places where there will be like potions. It's a safe place to rest, and effectively you can use things. You just have to replace them by coming back and replacing them physically, or you can use things and pay money for somebody else to come back and replace them. But the way stations are an incredible boon of why you want to be a guildsman. But in the long run, part of why you want access to the map room is because it's 50 to 200 gold to copy a map. And then you have a map of where you're going. If you just go to the library, you can look at the maps and then go to the places. But obviously, you wouldn't then have an idea of what it looks like down there. But that's also a way for if you go to the library first, I can tell you whether you're going to a place that is new, a place that is like owned by somebody, like they have a staked claim, or it's a place that has been explored. If it hasn't been explored, if you go there and you physically draw me a map that you can like take a picture with your cell phone of and send me a picture, if it looks close enough to the actual map that I'm using, you'll get 10 gold for that. So that's one thing to keep in mind is that they will buy maps from you. And if you already have like scoped out the maps ahead of time, you know essentially whether it's worth your time to do that, or you could always make the map even if you know it exists there and just not spend the 50 to 200 gold to buy the map.
Gotcha. Okay.
So a lot of what he did with that one was actually with a woman who you would be perfectly welcome to meet. This is the actually see, is that showing up? Yeah, excellent. This is the Undercity map. The main staircase that's kind of wide and centered towards the top. That staircase goes up to Delver Square. It is essentially what is right behind the fountain for man, I can't think of his name offhand, like Rosh Hashan or something like that. He's actually the person who founded Delver Square. He was like the first person to go underground and like rediscover the Bane Warrens, I feel like.
We're at a Besh or something like that.
Let me switch to the actual I know it lists his name here. Runahan, there we go. So those staircases there behind the statue of Runahan and behind the fountain, that's that staircase that's right behind. So this is the initial like entrance to the Undercity. And
Right.
part of
Right.
what Malchin could kind of take you through and almost like introduce you to is effectively that coming down here, you're effectively looking one at another set of staircases that leads down deeper into the Bane Warrens. But the other thing is that there's a hall to like a big mahogany door that enters into the Delvers Guild, and that's just straight in front of you. One thing to keep in mind is that the Undercity is a Delvers Guild creation to kind of make a 12th district of the city to say like look, we own and live in a lot of Midtown is very much a guilders or like a Delvers area, but we're underground people. We make our money underground. This is our home. So that's why there's like a gray area between calling this like a black market and like just another market. Uh Around kind of like the edge there, that's like one of the different markets. Effectively, this map is meant to represent like infinite possibilities of where you could go. And then the place that is like that SGP over on the side, that's the Scouts, Guides, and Porters. But those are the three big locations to kind of pick up in like the initial heading down into the Undercity.
Okay. Yeah.
But inside of the actual Delvers Guild HQ here is Erica Sue. She is effectively kind of like a librarian, kind of like a Delver of sort who just keeps this location. There are minimal things for sale. You can come here and drink for free. They have wine and ale pretty much whenever. They have a certain selection of some guild maps. They have some things that would like set you up for like basic adventuring gear. Like often I'll have things like torches, extra rope, kind of expendable things almost like pythons, but in general, just kind of like roughly adventuring gear, kind of prepared and ready to go. So you don't necessarily have to go to another market to get them. There's a healer's kit kind of location. Effectively, like once per day, you can use a healer's kit, kind of like as a feat for free here. Little bit of like a place where if you wanted to copy a map, you could spend the money and copy one of the maps that's here. But it's basically meant to be this is like a little library. So if you came here with Mountain at some point, that's where you would meet the Delvers Guild representative here is Erica Sue. She could greet you and welcome you and kind of offer you like a little tour of this place. But effectively, if you were interested in the guildsman level of joining the Delvers Guild, it is 20 gold for the year, and I can get all of your paperwork set up and get it prepared for you, and you will have access to the guild library is in Old Town. It is not difficult to find, but we can leave you with a card that can take you there.
That's why I'm here. And Davros will take out 20 gold and kind of lay it down. And
And do you have imperial citizenship? Do you have your imperial papers?
hi. And I mean, I assume he would, unless there's some reason he wouldn't. Yeah, but he is a local, so
As like a local and as a guildie, I have no inclination to say that you wouldn't. That would purely be if you wanted to role play that you were basically illegally here. Like one thing for Malchin is technically Malchin came in on a ship. He bought papers, effectively like an illegal alien. And when he came here, when she kind of noticed that he's essentially has somebody else's like name and birth date, um, part of what they did was give him sort of like a message that said, if you have a problem with this person, come to the headquarters for the Delvers Guild. We'll answer for him. But otherwise, this person checks out and they're basically fixing his papers. And it's one of those things to kind of remind again the whole idea of this West March is this city is the Delvers Guild city. And it's weird how many organizations kind of have that claim, but that's kind of one of the things to keep in mind about this place is that there's a lot of reasons why this city exists still, and it's often because different organizations allow it to exist, kind of thing.
okay, yeah. Davros would he would have his regular papers, and he would show them. I assume he would have, probably maybe something similar would have happened with the when he first joined the Iron Guild or the Iron Workers
The
Guild. So
Ironworkers Guild has the same level of weight to throw around. Delver's Guild is rather new. I feel like Delver's Guild is like 10 or 15 years old. The Ironworkers Guild is quite old, and they're definitely like, as far as legitimate business goes, they're the biggest fish in the pond.
yeah, so
The Guild
yeah,
House of Iron. Yeah, I was like reading about the Guild House of Iron in particular because I was like, I wonder what guild he imagines. Like whether you actually think of yourself as like a weaponsmith or as like somebody who's just like an iron worker. But it was one of those things where it's like don't forget, the Guild House of Iron controls everybody who works metal. So when you think about like the Guildsman District, the Guild House of Iron Workers is effectively 90% probably of the guild's district. And it's the largest district. It includes like the gold and platinum workers, who are the highest paid of everybody, for work effort to like pay out. It's just one of those things where it's quite insane to start to imagine what that means. But it's like their guild hall is just a massive bar, basically.
right, yeah. Didn't have any real specialization in mind for Davros in terms of like what he actually works on. So, but kind of just a general like iron worker, I guess.
Yeah. So again, that would kind of fall into just the generic Guild House of Iron. There's nothing wrong with that in the least bit. It can be one of those things in the long run you can still always decide. I don't think there's any reason in particular that you have to until you really decide to. So, in the long run, when we're just kind of kicking it like this, it's perfectly fine. I think of most of the stuff where you start to set your backstory in stone is really when you want to role play with other people who are members of like the campaign, because I think that's where you really set your backstory in stone. So like if you met somebody and they were specifically like a tin worker, you could all of a sudden decide, yeah, I also work primarily with tin and I'm a member of the Tin Workers Guild. But in the long run, like you don't have to decide any of that until it comes time. And who knows what in the long run you'll do with Davros. But it kind of sets that in stone. Erica Sue will kind of take your paperwork, offer you to grab a pint of ale, take a seat for a little bit. You could browse through some of the maps while she basically gets your paperwork in set in order. Probably be about like 5-10 minutes as she gets everything filled out, and then she'll return with your paperwork and kind of present you with everything that you're kind of set, good to go. Um, if you end up with any questions about the perks of being a member of the guild, please never hesitate to ask myself, or if you would like, go to the library. The head of the library, Shad Leave Bovic, is the head librarian of the library and is always present where many other delvers are indeed still venturing into the Bane Warrens. Shad is always available, as is myself, for any questions that you might have.
That sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, I think Davros might have yeah, just spent like the 5-10 minutes maybe looking, maybe seeing if there are maps of the seem like below the docks section. If I don't know how they're organized, but maybe just like kind of like looking through. And
Roll a D100 for me.
98.
I'm very sorry. As far as my understanding goes, we do not have any maps beneath the docks. It's all below sea level. Um, there are some instances where there have been rumors of those who have delved into the actual walls of the Cliffs of Lost Hope. I can't remember what the cliffs are actually called, but I feel like they have an ominous name like that. Uh, there are many who have rumored that there are those who have delved into the cliffs of Lost Wishes. I was so close. And many people have said, do you actually share why you are looking for this information?
Probably not yet. No.
There are many people who have spoken about those who have delved into the cliff walls. There are perhaps those who also came from within the Bane Warrens and broke out of the cliff walls into the open air. I do not believe I have any maps of those either here. If you were to investigate the main map room in Old Town, Chad would most certainly be able to know better, but you could certainly find those there.
Interesting. Thank you. Perhaps I'll follow up with Shad at some point.
So theoretically, there's nothing else that like I would require role playing with you with Erica Sue. She's a font of information. That was an especially bad roll to find something. It does mean though, if you were to go into the docks and one find an underground resource, you could map it and sell that map for 10 gold. I could actually, if you were to find any of these, if we do not have the maps, we would buy the map from you if you could make it for us for 10 gold. That is one of the perks that it should always be reminded. If you will map them for us, we would graciously purchase the map from you. I believe we could buy maps if you were to find where someone went underground the docks, but I must say, from my understanding, the docks are built on sand. It's not the most sturdy of places. I believe many of those people suffer there, or how often the buildings collapse because the foundation is not there is nothing there for them. Um, and that's just like a little bit of the lore of the docks. Is effectively the docks are continually kind of like collapsing because there's nothing underground. It's all soft sand.
Hmm. Makes sense, I suppose.
But that is that reminder, like if you find something and I tell you it's not mapped, you can map it and sell the map to the Delvers Guild for 10 gold.
Yeah. Okay.
So, do you have any desire while you're in the Undercity to again, this was kind of meant to be something that we're doing like as like midweek as part of your downtime, but realistically, if we're in the actual present day of adventuring, I really would rather if we actually start with you from your home, and the question of do you want to go pick up a sidekick from the guild and actually walk around the city and potentially go places with somebody else from the Twin Star Marauders?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I think.
you could also go to Delver Square and purchase like effectively a similar idea of a sidekick, but essentially like buy a it's almost the same kind of thing as like what scouts guild guides and orders are. You could buy uh a a follower.
Yeah, I think he's been spending most of his time in the Warrens at the Skinner. So that would be his preference rather than hiring somebody he doesn't know, at least by like sight or something like that.
So if I recall, we've got you we put you roughly like near like Wayfarers Street and like what was it, like Lost Lady Street? Is do we kind of have you almost like north of Seepage Row where you live?
Yeah, I don't recall exactly, but it was like fairly close to the gate. I think. Yeah, like above Seepage Row, Wayfarer Street, that kind of general
All
area
right.
sounds. Yeah.
So let's have you roll a D12 for your venture off in the morning to go visit. Or actually, I should ask you, what time do you think you're going to the Warrens today to visit the Crooked Skinner?
I'm gonna say like today he decided to, he's taking off from work. Like he doesn't really need. He's in a much more comfortable financial position now with the money he made from selling the armor. So he's kind of, he's still keeping up with his dues, but he's, not as. And this way he'll have more of like a full day. So I think he would.
A true Delver.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think he'd be going off. He'd probably, have some, get some breakfast, so not like crack of dawn early, but fairly early.
Gotcha. Was that your D12? Is that 12?
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, while you're heading off and kind of like moving across the district, probably taking something like Ring Road over towards the Old Sea Road. You kind of do a little jink around Curtin Street, but to basically make it like to the Warrens pretty quickly there. It's about the most direct route. But while you're heading off in this kind of like venture through the city, passing through a lot of the guild district that is quite kind of familiar to you, a lot of the areas that are also like where Dalton used to find his normal stomping ground. So you're kind of trying to stay close. This is almost one of those things where there's still tons of people that you're flowing past, even though it's kind of early in the morning where people should be at work. There's a lot of people who are still sleeping if they don't work this kind of like first shift of the day kind of thing. But you still see a lot of people, and there's still these occasions where you're seeing Dalton's face on people, and it's like that second look where like it's clearly psychological that you want to see your son, and you like take a moment to like double back and run after, touch the person on the shoulder, and as they kind of turn around, like how did I ever mistake this person with like a long sweeping mustache as my like clean cut shaved son. And kind of after one of these little instances where you like grab somebody, take a look at them, and you have this like kind of like downtrodden look on your head, you see like on like a little alley, maybe off towards like Licorice Lane or one of the little flop houses that he would. I think that's where we put like one of the penny houses that he would stay at. You like kind of are walking past this little penny house and you grab this person's shoulder, and then as you see it's not Dalton, you hear somebody kind of like speaking what feels like catches your eye from with or catches your ear from within. It's like, very disappointed on the things you find. And you see like a hobbled over woman with like long gray hair, and she kind of like moves out of like the shadows, just like covered in very like raggedy kind of like woolen like shawls. She's kind of like hunched over. You can't tell if this is somebody who actually is like hunchback and kind of leans on a cane that is essentially a shit. Why can't I think of the name of it? It's the actual druid attack is like the name for this kind of cane. But it's got like a big round wooden top, and it's like the knuckle of a tree, so it weighs like 5 pounds there. But she's just this little old lady who's like leaning on it, and that's the size of her hand. Shillelagh. There we go. And she's just kind of like hobbling over to you as she speaks, almost kind of like side eye, like looking up at you as if she can't bend her neck back any further to look up while she's hunched over. Um, and as she gets like closer with your attention, she'll just would you have any generosity for a little old woman who needs whatever you might be able to spare? And she just kind of holds out like a dark, kind of like muddy hand.
Yeah. So Davros, yeah, failing to find more like it, he'll kind of mutter as she hobbles closer, and when she holds out her hand, Davros will kind of like pause for a moment, but then he'll nod, and he'll reach into his purse and uh, withdraw a few silvers, and kind of sort of move to kind of like put them in her hand, and maybe like almost kind of like close her hand on over on top of them, and that should enough get you something to eat, perhaps a room for the night.
How many silvers is a few? You thinking two or three?
uh yeah, maybe three.
Awfully generous of you. And you can kind of like feel that she is almost like moving the coins in her hand, like to kind of like feel them with her palm. And like she kind of like brings it down to look, and then she kind of like looks back up at you. Very generous. I would like to say I couldn't possibly, but I must. And your generosity, oh, there's nothing I could do for you, could I? For such a gift on this day.
So Davros will kind of like give a little shake of his head, and it's I've had some luck recently, so think nothing of it. But then when she offers, when she says like if there's anything she can do for him, Davros will kind of thinking probably nothing's going to come of it, but he will. Uh, well, I am looking for someone. Um, don't know. Probably not seen him,
Someone
but
on the streets. What does this person look like?
so Davros will he will give a description, and then he will say it goes by name is Dalton. Goes by Dem to his friends. This is one of the areas he used to frequent.
Good, good. I am familiar here. I too frequent the streets. I would like to help you, and you walk this way to see your. Would you give her the name Dalton? You walk this way to see your Dalton?
I've not seen him, and yeah, he would give her the name. I've not seen him in some time, but
How long? How much time?
several months, 4 months now, I suppose.
Anja has little to do but to watch. Melandra will look. Roll a D100 for me. Melandra will watch. If I can help you, I will. I will eat today because of you. And she kind of like almost like kisses your hand. That's the 12. Did you just roll that?
Yes, yeah.
Roll persuasion for me real quick. Rushing.
So that is a yeah, that'll be a 5.
So she kind of like looks to you and she's um Melandra has much time to watch. I will help you. I will eat today because of you. And again, she'll kiss your hand, and then she'll like look around and I am here many mornings. I spend my nights in the place your kind doesn't like. I can often be found at lackeys. Roll a history check for me. And if you search for me in the Warrens, you can find me there at night. But come see Melandra. If I do not see you in the next few days, I will tell you what I can find, and I will try to help you reunite with your Dalton. Do you want to roll the d4 added to that as well, please?
Oh, he's not proficient in history.
Gotcha.
So then
So
that'll
yeah,
actually be 14, -2.
gotcha. You're relatively sure that you've heard kind of in the like grapevine of whispers inside of the Warrens of a place called Lackeys. And she one kind of referred to you can find me in the Warrens at night. Um, but you kind of have this odd idea that like when the sun rises, she's usually like around this area. And when it comes time for her to spend the night, she's often at Lackey's. So you kind of have this weird kind of conception of what she, where she is. And it's basically, you know, come see her at some point and hopefully she'll have some information for you. She's got nothing but time to watch. What that really means to you, it's up to you to interpret, but this seems like somebody who's kind of grateful. If you have any other thoughts about this, let me know. Otherwise, that's kind of her just like thanking you for a good bit of generosity.
Yeah, and Davros will kind of nod and kind of I appreciate you keeping an eye out, and should you come across a useful information, I'll have more than silver for you. So, but I will seek you out in the future, Alondra. And he'll give his own name, Davros, to her. But be well. I must be off now.
So other than that little like moment of interaction with this like stinky little old lady, you can kind of like walk off, returning to the old sea road, crossing off into the Warrens. When you pop into the Warrens, let me have you roll a survival for me, and then that'll tell me what I'm going to have you roll for an encounter die.
That will be a oop, just changed to a 4, so a straight 4.
Yeah. So let's go. I gotta go D4. Let me go with D4 from you. No, oh man. All right, that's good. You rolled the D4. You didn't roll a one. Yeah. So as you kind of like walk through the warrens here, you're like trying to track your way around. You're like 40 minutes into walking through this place, and you're just kind of like twisted up, and you're just having a really tough time kind of figuring out where anywhere is. You keep coming to this like section where everything around is burnt down. A fire must have come through here recently, and you're just like struggling to find your way back to the Crooked Skinner. And after about like 40 minutes stretches into the hour, you start to come to the realization like you're doing this right. You keep coming back to this burnt down area of the Warrens because you would normally pass through this area to get to the Skinner. And it's not until you kind of like give up on letting that stop you that you basically like pass through and you find that the Crooked Skinner is still there. It's one of the few places in a small like football field sized block that has not been burnt down. Uh, this is kind of a weird way to play it off. I technically had the fire hit when Chris was ending his session, and I forgot about that when I like let you get to the Crooked Skinner like in that downtime. But effectively, there was a fire in the Warrens recently, and coming back to it, you find it incredibly difficult to find because you're used to tracking through this one area that is now a massive swath of this area that has been burnt down and consumed by fire. And you can see different points where the fire has like licked up close to the walls of the Crooked Skinner, but you can kind of see like roll insight for me or an investigation. You can choose. Insight would probably be if you like spend a lot of time. Investigation would be as if you actually stop to investigate it. Obviously, insight would be more like if you just walk into the Crooked Skinner and kind of take things in as you move.
Yeah, I think it would be more insight in that case. Yeah. 7. Oh no, sorry. 5.
Yeah, so this is gonna feel a lot more like, whew, looks like we had a close call. Good thing it didn't burn down the Skinner. But other than that, once you do enter back into the Crooked Skinner, I don't know why I didn't switch you to the Warrens yet. But once you do enter back into the Crooked Skinner, kind of the classic idea. You've got all of the normal people at play here in the tavern. Um, the normal like 6 or 7 like hirelings who you can kind of choose from, who are guild members. Couple of the other players who kind of are occasional people that you meet, but in the long run, this is kind of like the normal kind of cheers moment of I can't believe I bring up cheers and then I can't think of it, but it's the people that you know.
Yep, a place where everybody knows your name. Yeah.
Man, that's what I was looking for. How do you forget that? Like normally I would say cheers and like it automatically happens the place where everybody knows your name. But yeah, you can kind of step in. You are welcome to approach Maybell for food, beer, information. You can call on Kalimtas if you would. This is when I would basically have you sell that bottle of wine. But in the long run, you can also just approach any of the other guild members if you wanted to pick up somebody as a sidekick. If you had someone in mind. I think we've basically decided that Erwin and Mukhtar are the hunters, are the archers that you've hired to search for Dalton in the past. Mukhtar is more of a fighter. Erwin is more of a ranger. But those are the two. I think you traveled with one or the other of them as a sidekick already.
Yeah, he's traveled with Mukhtar once before. So I think seeing him here again, um, would probably he'd head to the bar, maybe order like a drink for himself, and order a second one, bring it over towards the table with Mukhtar, probably like kind of clap him, on the shoulder, um, lay set the second beer down in front of him, and Mukhtar, uh, any interest in joining me for another foray today?
If you call on my swords you shall have. What sort of goals do you have this day?
Um, it's a good question. So, I mean, obviously, Davros wants to kind of investigate what he's learned about the Enin, but I think given what he's heard, he knows that it's foolhardy, something that he wouldn't be, he's not really probably ready to take them on. Um,
I would say on some level, depending on how logical you're going to allow yourself to be, there's certainly the ability to go to the docks and potentially like ruffle some feathers in the docks area. There's certainly that's one place that you could go and kind of potentially find like maybe like roughing up a few people in the right way might get you information, but also like waiting for like replies. You do kind of understand Malchin has things flowing in a not terribly hostile way. That's where the threat kind of lies, is like, I'm not suggesting you go into this place and then start fighting. Whereas if you're like searching for information on the outskirts, starting problems might not go over as poorly. You know what I mean there? Like, don't go into the slave market and then try to fight your way out. But if you fight some of the people who are peripheral to it, things might work out better,
yeah,
or at
and
least not
and
so poorly.
yeah, so maybe Davros is actually thinking, he doesn't know. I mean, he's had run-ins with the Pale Dogs, um, and maybe if he knows they kind of, he's already, has issues with them, but maybe if he can find some of them and essentially, he maybe they, the Warrens are close to the docks, right? So maybe they know something about this group that he could learn. So maybe rather than going directly, to the docks, he would be essentially like, you see if we can, uh, yeah, find a couple of these pale dogs and maybe ask them what they might know, if anything.
Kind of like holding up one of his arms that's like rather severely burned. You can see some of like the actual like singeing on some of his leather that kind of covers one of his uh what would it be? Let's say his like left arm, where it would normally be like his bow arm, or also it's like the arm that he would basically be have towards his enemy, so it's a little heavier like leather than like his actual like pulling arm slash his main hand, where he would fight with it needs a little more dexterity. You can see like the singeing and burning on his leather as you bring up the pale dogs. He'll like set down his cards from the table. Almost the entire conversation at that table would like stop for a moment as they kind of like react, and it's like, if you're ready to go after some pale dogs, you don't have to wait one more instant. And he like folds in his hand, and you'll see is like Lineth and Kiritoa are both like at, or wait, Zeneth and Kiritoa are both at the same time. He's like, are you gonna go in loud? And you kind of have like a moment where like the other barbarian right next to you, he's like pretty much naked, wearing nothing but animal skins. He's got like many axes on hand, and he's just like ready to start a fight in a second with the pale dogs. But you can kind of gain an understanding in that quick little instant. Mukhtar is burnt because the pale dogs. This fire around the Skinner is because of the pale dogs, and they know it. There's a reason that the this place survived, and it's because everybody was here to keep it put out. But at the same time, this is one of those like that's enough for them just to hear the names that they're like all ready, and you basically have like Mukhtar's ready to go do whatever. Kirito is gonna basically volunteer, like if you want to go in loud, I'm I'm ready. We can start killing them right away. And then you kind of have Zeneth like kind of silently sliding her cards forward. Or we could always try to sneak in and see how many we can kill before they know that we are hunting them.
Well, I'm never been much for subtlety, and he'll kind of like kind of gesturing to Mukhtar's arm. Seems they've seems perhaps they've earned a bit of a uh, loud response.
Not a Lord Loud, I can do both, and I am prepared. And he'll kind of like nod to Zeneth and to Kiritoa as like, better luck next time. And he'll kind of like look to you and we go after the dogs.
Davros will nod, and no time like the present. And then kind
Um
of like drain the last of his beer, kind of put it down, and ready when you are.
so if you are prepared to go after pale dogs, you've met up with them in a few different places where they've kind of like stifled your ability to walk freely. So you have a certain sense of kind of like walking around the Warrens can get you pale dogs. Walking and being observant enough can often get you like actually spotting them and not walking into like a place where they've got like traffic stopped. What kind of going after the pale dogs do you have in mind? Do you want to ask around and find information and try to like learn, or are you going to just kind of like walk yourself into trouble? Would you like to try to walk around and almost lead them into a trap?
Yeah, so Devros is thinking maybe I mean he's seen them in a couple different places, but maybe they have some uh, it's not in the headquarters necessarily, but like certain kind of bases of operations, and he's going to maybe suggest that we try and you know um, ask around some places. Just kind of I mean, they might find us while we're kind of just walking the streets, but essentially go out, start, maybe asking some people, uh, see if anybody actually knows, like, oh, I've seen them on this corner, or I've seen them, couple coming in and out of that building, and just trying to essentially see if he gets lucky. Um, uh, but he doesn't have any real, no real plan beyond that.
I think I've described two different places where you've encountered them. Do you remember where those places were? Like, do you want to try to backtrack to a place where you've had encounters and had fights?
So there was the one alleyway, but I think it's probably been a few weeks, and Davros is still not like 100% familiar with the Warrens. He doesn't know
Yeah,
how
the
often
Warrens
they.
should never be a place that you're familiar with. That's one of the things that even having it mapped out feels wrong because it really should never fit like that. To say that there are streets in this place is kind of a joke. It's far more that there are alleys, and it's just where like the last house that kind of crumbled is. So yeah, let me have you roll a perception check as you just kind of like go around walking. Um, and then we'll see whether you get somewhere and you can like speak to some people before you kind of find yourself already encountering them.
All right. It's a 12.
Gotcha. So as you like head out of the Crooked Skinner and you kind of like reassess like the fire damage like from kind of like the northwestern area, and you're like kind of considering where you go from here. You're again probably leaving from that like southern point, kind of that like pink mark there. Would you head north along like the alley that kind of like goes up near like 316 and head up in that direction and head towards like the northern warrens? Would you head to the east towards the water, the south kind of towards like back towards the guild district, or to the west? You're kind of at, it's not really a road, but that's one of the bigger alleys that really does give you kind of a central point. And at this point, for a lot of purposes, the Skinner is burned clear of some of the congestion on that northern side, where it's not like immediately butted up to things on those southeastern sides, but it is one of those things where even at their roof level, it already attaches like above it. A lot of the Warrens, if you're on the ground, you can't see the sky because they build across those gaps.
Yeah, so I think maybe leaving the Skinner head, Davros would kind of think, okay, we'll head east towards the water, and then maybe north if uh, yeah, so kind of east then north. So towards, I guess, kind of 316, 319, and then once it gets closer to the water, kind of head north towards 314.
Gotcha. Damn, I can't remember how I spelled Mukhtar's name.
I think I have it Muhktar.
Oh, I never created him as an NPC. Shit. Um, do you remember what kind of fighter we made him? I guess just probably a battle master.
I don't remember. I think last time we traveled together, you mostly went ranged.
Yeah, I was just thinking I didn't make him primarily an archer. Um,
But I mean, I'm good
I'm
with
gonna do the sword master decks again. I like that build, and it's my custom. So, um, I assume that I can send this to you again. That it's easier to have it freshly sent to you.
sure if you've got it uh easily available. Otherwise, I can find it in my messages.
Yeah, I store them on OneNote and just re-download it every time I use them as sidekick. So,
Okay, and then I do have.
or
Looks like you had sent me the tracker back on December 3rd. I don't know if maybe you were using that one for him.
gotcha. Maybe that's what I should do. Is I should make Erwin be the sword master Dex. Go for the tracker, and I'll make Mukhtar be the tracker.
Okay, and I have that stat block I have, so you don't need to resend that one.
That's the key, though. I just downloaded it for myself, and I named it Mukhtar, so I should remember to actually create an NPC for him. So as you kind of like head off into this direction, you're actually going to start to like wander towards the north, and it doesn't take but a few moments to have a few kids jeering at you and kind of like calling attention to the fact, like maybe like even saying to Mukhtar, like, "Uh, fall asleep and get burned by your mommy." And I don't know, that's kind of silly because they are kids and he's an adult, but kind of like jeers like that about like the burnt down, like bringing up like the fire. And you have a pretty quick moment to recognize like all of these kids have those like black fingernails of the pale dogs, and one or two of them has the golden double knuckle of the steel knuckles. I can't even think what it's called, but the other kind of sign of the pale dogs, and you kind of gain a sense like it took you a minute of walking outside of the Skinner and heading off to the north, and you're already walking by pale dogs. They're already talking shit to you. You could answer them right away and get into some shit. You can move by and see if you could kind of like lead them somewhere that puts them at a disadvantage. But it's kind of up to you. Like, what are your thoughts as you kind of get jeered at and sort of ridiculed by, let's say, four kids right now? And when I say kids, I mean these are combatants. I don't want to make it seem evil, but this is part of what the pale dogs are. Is they're young kids. They can be teenagers if you have a problem with beating them up and potentially killing them. But
No, yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, no worries on my end. But yeah, kind of responding to the jeers, Davros kind of he glaring at them, and you think you're tough, setting a fire. Yeah, you gonna you gonna flap your tongues all day, or you want to?
is cleaning out the rats the best way you know? Little bit of fire always does them good. Singe their fur, get rid of the plague. And you'll see as like the four of them kind of like stand up, and they'll basically this is kind of like a classic like high school fight where they'll like stand in front of you, but they're basically just kind of like getting in your face. They're not getting too much closer than like a few inches away from you, but it's almost like one of those things where like the main one is the one doing all the other talking, and you can see that the other three are just like there, definitely wondering how confident they really are in taking on this fight. But the one who started it is certainly at least more invested.
Yeah, so Davros will kind of like focusing his attention on that one. Maybe kind of like do like crack his knuckles, kind of maybe crack his neck, and speaking of plagues that need cleaning out, um, and he will essentially start kind of walking menacingly towards that one, um, almost like he's still kind of like glancing towards the others a bit, but essentially trying to give off the impression that he's like not concerned with them at all. Like he's just gonna, yeah, like heading right for them.
Yeah, so basically just put yourself right in front of that like bat winged hammer, and that's kind of like the situation you're already in. They're like faced into you already. I mean, you can place Mukhtar wherever you would like. He does not have to be behind you in a similar fashion. I feel like probably whichever side you give him, though, I'll put the like star on that side. So if we keep him where he is at, I'll probably do that.
Yeah, I feel like maybe. I mean, Mukhtar seems, pretty eager to go after these ones as well, but maybe he's just a little more circumspect than Davros is. So maybe just kind of trying to keep a little bit more of an eye out, but so hanging close, but not quite up with Davros. So basically, good where he is now, I think.
And I have you actually drop a second token of Davros on the screen for me. And then can you roll initiative?
And initiative would be the same way. We roll a d4 instead of taking or we
Uh,
just so using dexterity, I guess.
I feel like Bard is the only person who is proficient in initiative. And that's
Yeah. Okay.
because they get Jack of all trades.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. So that would just be a
Which
five.
also to point out, like if you had Jack of all trades, you would roll the proficiency dice and then take half. If you have expertise, you roll two proficiency dice.
Right. Yep. Makes sense.
But yeah, I think maybe there's a feat that gives you proficiency in initiative, but I think otherwise bards are the only person who would ever get that.
Okay.
So what do you have for initiative?
Oh, I got a 5 for Davros. 5 total.
And I rolled two ones. All right, so that's going to be our initiative. Uh, I meant to actually make a token to put on the person who is on initiative. But that's kind of going to be how I think I'm going to do initiative tracking in the future is with like a second token over on the side like that. So I'm going to start off here with the first of these kids as you kind of like move forward. Man, this is kind of the thing. Like, I'm not gonna. I don't like to start fights, but I feel like the fight was gonna start, and he wins in initiative. So it's more like this is probably like the moment you go to swing your hammer. He's just quicker, kind of like pulling his. You know, I often flavor weapons differently. They're all the same stat block, but he's gonna maybe start with a dagger, and just like as quick as you go to like reach for your hammer, he's just gonna be like stabbing twice for your stomach, kind of thing, like a quick little stab at you. You know, I should have done that anyways. Also, as a thought, like if you roll damage at the same time, that's a good option as well. Changes the dice a little bit, obviously, but so he should hit you here with the 17 plus 3 plus 1 for a total of 21 to hit. But he's only going to deal 2 damage to you as he like slashes across your stomach. Maybe like just barely nicking through the leather of your apron as this first one kind of reacts to like the threat tier.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
Second one's gonna close in, and I think he's gonna flank behind you. So he's gonna make the same attack here. He's got like a longer sword, and his is going to be kind of slashing across your back as he flanks you. So instead of plus one, it's a plus three. Whoops, I meant to do a reroll. Um, the d6 again, though, is his damage die here, just to clarify. So 8, 11, 14 to hit.
That will miss.
So yeah, as he like kind of crosses between Mukhtar and you, it's just enough of like a distraction that he's like looking for as he like slashes across your back. You're almost more prepared for that like tricky, like sneaky move rather than like the dagger that you didn't really see. And it's enough that you dodge like the bigger attack or the the flanking maneuver. But then that will take you to you. What would you like to do?
Yeah, so Davros maybe paying a little more attention to the one with the sword, and then kind of like feels the dagger kind of slide through, and not a terrible wound. It'll kind of like look down, see like a little trickle of blood. Um, um, my turn, and he's going to swing at going to move and swing at uh the one with the dagger, who actually got through. Should be a 15 to hit.
15 is a solid hit, very easily getting through his like sneaky maneuvers and little bit of leather that he wears.
But that will just be for 6 damage.
Gonna leave him injured, but he's still doing overall fine.
Okay, and I think Mukhtar is going to turn his attention to the one moving around to flank. But I think he will kind of similarly maybe take a step back here to kind of as he's focusing on Davros, take the opportunity to flank him himself and stabbing out with his own blade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely going to be a solid hit there with 20 plus.
and looks like that should be for 10 piercing.
Gotcha. So that's going to leave this one mortally wounded as he takes those. Basically, without even paying attention to you, he leaves himself completely vulnerable, and you just like pierce right through his spine. You can just see gouts of blood like instantly coming out of this person.
All right, and I think he will kind of as he's like kind of still moving after that to kind of come up and place himself beside Davros here. Um, but that will otherwise be his turn.
Gotcha. So next one kind of moves into a similar fashion of kind of like maneuvering to flank on you. And he's going to kind of stab out at you with just kind of as like almost like a makeshift spear. You can kind of see it's almost like a fishing implement. Um, so 14, 2, and 3, 17, 19 should hit for 2 slashing damage or 2 piercing damage as he stabs into you.
Okay, was that Davros or Mukhtar? Sorry.
Oh, my bad. That was Mukhtar. So with him, yeah, my bad. Um, he's a fighter. No, wait, he's the ranger. Does he have Constitution as a saving throw?
No.
So make a con save just with a D20, and you need to roll 3 or higher.
Okay, 18. So he should be good.
Yeah, so this one is going to run to flank Mukhtar, and that's actually going to put him in the position where he comes too close to Davros, and as he's rushing across to like almost slide in and stab towards Mukhtar's back, you can make an opportunity attack with Davros and react to him getting too close to you.
Yeah, he'll try and do a quick kind of like side swipe with the maul as he kind of catches him running past. But that will be a miss.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and then I should be able to hit you with again at Mukhtar with a 16 to hit, and this one's going to be for 6 damage. So another con save. You need a 7 or higher.
Nope, that is a 2.
So yeah, as he like slides across, uh, Davros kind of swings down to like club at him as he's sliding. Just barely slides across, and he's able to like get his scimitar like up and through the gut of Mukhtar. Mukhtar is going to kind of fall injured in this first little like moment here, and it's gonna go then to. Oh, see, this gets incredibly bad really quick. I hate that a digital resource will cock a die. Like that is too realistic. I don't need you to be that realistic that the die is going to sit on an edge. So yeah, this first guy still flanking Davros is going to swing on Davros with his dagger again. I hit it's only for 2. So he does have flanking on you now. Should be a hit though with 19 for 2 piercing damage into Davros.
Yep, 19 hits.
Let's see. The second guy is the one who's actually bloodied here. Should I roll all 5 dice at once and try to interpret them all? I wish I could put different colored dice like I have in real life. Yeah, this guy is actually going to disengage and run away, right away. He is severely wounded and he wants nothing of this and doesn't even really notice like that Mukhtar falls because he's looking out for his own hide. I'm gonna say he gets to a building on kind of like the east area, and he's almost out of sight with that one movement there. But we'll go to the next. Oh wait, no, the next guy is you. So you've got one guy ran away. Two of them still like over top of Mukhtar as they take him down. As you like swing for the one who actually takes him down. What is Davros thinking here?
So Davros, not expecting things to kind of turn this quickly, and seeing Mukhtar go down, kind of, and missing badly with his own kind of swing at the guy who took him down, is going to kind of just let out a kind of a wordless bellow and go into a rage. Um, and he's going to move to kind of stand between these two, and as he's going, attempting to swing and knock out I think the one that he had already injured, which is the one that was kind of he had been
Gotcha. Behind you
speaking
now,
with.
like to your right.
Yep, yep. Um, and I am going to go ahead and use my inspiration, which I got with that one from the last opportunity
Gotcha.
attack. Yes, I should definitely hit 18 plus,
100%. Not that well armored.
and that is going to be for 13 damage, non-lethal.
Non-lethal? Gotcha. You can definitely knock him unconscious. As he's like eyeing. Yeah, he was already attacking you. Yeah, I think it's just a solid. You're surgical enough with your hammer strikes. Maybe this is one of those things where it's like a hammer to the clavicle, so you like break a few of his ribs that he's just done, incapacitated, no chance that he's going to be doing anything threatening for a month or two. You can drop him to the ground. And then let's go straight to death save with Mukhtar, unless you had something else in mind.
Nope, that was it for Davros. I think he's kind of like going into the rage. He essentially doesn't even notice the one that kind of fled towards the building. Um, so he's turning his attention on the two that are still kind of here as he knocks this one out. And then that's one that'll be one pass for Mukhtar.
Gotcha. So next guy here is actually going to attack for Davros as you like move between him. Uh, op- Hoping that you're kind of distracted from the guy that you like swing your hammer on, thinking that he's going to get to flank you as you knock him unconscious. Like it becomes too clear as you turn around that you're still paying plenty of attention to him. That's a 7-8 to hit. There's no way that's a hit, and it was my best damage yet. The next guy can do this, just ignore the d6, and that'll tell me what he's doing. And then the next one would be his attack if he's still attacking. So one would be against you. He's not going for Mukhtar. Still hostile, so he will attack you. So this will be his attack. Um, that was like kind of me checking to see if they bottle, by the way, as you kill their like leader. But the attack should be good with an 18, 21, 22, and this one's going to be 7 damage on Davros. Um, I guess I could have got him to flanking. The flanking's not going to change the damage, but you will take 3 of that while you are raging.
Yep, gotcha.
And then the sword guy is going to get off the board and survive. But you have initiative comes back around. Oh wait, I got the guy who's unconscious, so I can still get a death save that might bring him back into the match. But barring that shows up as a 20, it is on you. Which I don't think it's going to be a 20. Oh, it's close though. It's thinking about it. No, 18. So it's on you.
Yeah, so Davros kind of gives out a snarl as he feels this another kind of hit. This one for a little bit more, and just in a still in the midst of his rage, going to turn and swing at the one to his right now, who's moved to flank him.
Gotcha.
Should be at 19 to hit,
Solid hit. No question.
and for 12 damage.
Looking like it's going to knock him directly unconscious. God, it still looks cocked. But I think that's, even if it were the 6, no, the 6 could be it. I think it's the 1. Yeah, this guy's just going to get knocked unconscious. Fatal or non-fatal attack here?
I think now with the between the rage and getting sliced up, he's not thinking about knocking him out. So he's just swinging kind of blindly in a rage. So fatal or lethal, yeah.
Gotcha. Anything else movement wise? Otherwise, you can go to death save for Mukhtar. And then it's my last of these guys.
Yeah, just turning, kind of like swinging and kind of like snarling at the this one remaining. Um, okay, that'll be one fail for Mukhtar.
Still going for you. He's not bottling. And we'll see. That's great. End of the D4 on top of the D6. Looks like it might be a crit or it's a 2. Might be the 2 or a 12. So 12 is 14, 15 to hit.
That will miss.
All right, so yeah, this guy, I feel like this was the guy with the spear, kind of stabbing out at you, misses even while he is left alone here. Um, and I'm tempted to see if it's he kind of like reassesses this. Yeah, I think I'm gonna see kind of like reassesses even after he's taken his shot here. Um, no, he's still in it to win it, so it's gonna go back around to. I actually wonder if the non-lethal attack gets to roll death saving throws. I don't think he does. I don't think he could possibly stand up here because I think you knock him unconscious and stabilized. So it's just on you.
Okay. Yeah. So Davros still enraged. Kind of like the spear kind of like hits some like maybe a piece of the leather apron and just like doesn't pierce through, and he kind of like smiles in a very kind of non-friendly way and swings his maul at this one in retaliation. But I don't think that will hit with a 10, or no, sorry, an 8.
No, not going to be enough to grab a hit.
Yeah. So he is yeah, kind of swings and misses. And that is, yeah, that's all he can do. Uh-oh. That's it for Mukhtar. He's dead. That was 1. So that's 2
Oh
fails.
shit!
Three total. Yeah, that's 3 fails. Thought it was going to land on a 19, and then it just kept going to a 1.
Create the NPC, and we kill the NPC. I think it's hilarious that I went to create everything from Mukhtar, and then he died like that. But yeah, so looks like right now we've got 1 and 1 of you guys left in this fight here. As it's kind of just you and this last guy with like the makeshift like fishing spear. Uh, so that was Mukhtar's turn. I don't think I rolled anything for this guy. I think it was right as you failed with Mukhtar. But I do
Yep.
want to remind you, you should have inspiration now as you've rolled a nat 1 with him. So you're inspired, at least having lost Mukhtar, to kind of, not lose this fight too.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it should be his turn on him.
Um, yeah. So you can kind of see at this point, like the fear is like realistically in this kid's eyes. I think maybe he's kind of connecting the dots, like Mukhtar and like the other one of the kids, like are actually dead. And it's like sinking in. I'm going to attack you still at disadvantage because he is effectively bottling here. Um, and I'm kind of giving him that in that he's also going to effectively be running away. So I'll still allow you to take an opportunity attack, but that would be at disadvantage. I'm giving him kind of a half on attack slash disengaging here. Just making it special for the actual narrative. I don't think it'll change anything at all. But this is
Sure.
his attack at you here. Um, so that's a 15 to hit. I'm pretty sure you said that as a miss. So as he's like stabbing out and like basically uses one of these like thrusts out with his spear to be the moment where he also disengages away from you. Again, you can still try to swing on him in the attack because he is going to run. But you'll kind of see like this is the same kind of moment as he's like looking down at the two of them, like bled out on the ground, and just kind of has like that moment of he's like, you were just supposed to leave. Nobody had to die, and he's just gonna kind of like flee into kind of he's not going the same way as the other one. He will kind of bug out in the opposite direction, probably getting a little bit deeper into an alleyway. but you are welcome to swing on him here.
Yeah, I think Davros is going to kind of shadow, as he moves to go. It's like, oh no, you don't, and he is essentially, for flavor purposes, trying to essentially do like a kind of sweeping attack with his maul to um, essentially take out the kid's legs, and stop him from going. So this would be non-lethal. Going to use the inspiration to make it a straight roll.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for that. So, do you want to sweep out his legs with a grapple and actually retain him, or sweep out his legs, like potentially break his legs that he can't run away non-lethal?
Uh, yeah, he's swinging out with a maul, I think, as he.
Just so you'll go for knocking him unconscious, but effectively you're going for his legs. So yeah,
Right.
make that attack. Do a straight roll here for me. And if you roll the damage again at the same time, you need a 12 to hit and you need a 9 to knock him unconscious.
Yeah, that will be 9 damage exactly.
Yep. So yeah, as you kind of like swing on him as he's like stepping away from you, you just like crack into one of his knees and like his like broken like floppy leg just like trips him up on himself and he just like stumbles to the ground as basically like his right leg just like shatters and like lands in this clearly like wrong direction. Kid's never gonna dance again. Never gonna dance again. Actually, that's a perfect time for you to meet somebody new who is going to step out from. Let me have you roll a perception check here.
15.
I swear I already dropped this token, but I don't see it. Um, You said 15? So yeah, you do spot like this person comes out from the area where the one kid who you didn't really pay attention to where he like fled to, but you do kind of like come to the realization, like almost in hindsight kind of moment, that this is roughly where the kid who fled actually went. And you see like an actual man kind of come out of that area, and you'll hear him actually say, "He's never gonna dance again. How unfortunate." And you'll just kind of see is this like dark figure kind of standing about like 6 or so feet tall, maybe a little bit taller than 6 feet, probably about 30 or 40 feet away from you. Kind of comes out of that little like alley. He's shrouded in like leather, kind of wears like a large hat, kind of like across his, or like a large hood, kind of like stooped over his head. And you kind of just can't really make out any features of what this person looks like, other than they're just kind of using their clothing to kind of hide much of their features. And they just kind of like approach hands up. You don't see any weapons on this person. And he's got like both hands up at his shoulders, palms out towards you. He's like, "You never had to come to this. Girath intended none of your people to die. But it is time for us to realize that the Warrens are not large enough for all of us here." What kind of thoughts do you have as you hear this person like approach? Your friend Mukhtar's dead on the ground. Two more of these kids are like broken and injured, and one of the kids is dead right beside Mukhtar.
Yeah, so Davros, kind of hearing the voice and turning, is going to kind of move back, still hefting the maul, not looking particularly placated, and uh, kind of looking towards this guy. These your little lapdogs, then?
I speak for Girath, and they serve him. What of you? You have taken 3 of mine, and one of yours has fallen. A life for a life. We need not take these things beyond this.
And what of the fire? Seems I From
It
what I'm
was meant
hearing,
to remind you that time was up, that you should leave this place. It was meant to take your home, but none of you were to be harmed.
you think you're going to drive us out? Another thing coming, I think.
We had hoped you would grow larger than the Warrens could accept. This place is not for your kind. You are better than this. You have come to serve and help people. This is a place of no hope. Your kind do not belong here.
From what I see, perhaps there's no hope because it's people like you infesting this place. Perhaps what's needed is a cleansing.
Cleansings happen. Cleansings come about, and they burn away the refuse. But there is always more to rise up. Trash is infinite. It will always be here. These people belong here. It is you who do not.
Well, I suppose we're going to have to agree to disagree there then. And perhaps we can come to some sort of arrangement. You don't want to lose any more of yours, I'd imagine.
I believe you misunderstand the value I find in my children. And he's gonna like come closer to you, still hands kind of raised, not really like trying to be any sort of a threat, but he is going to effectively kind of approach like all four of these, including Mukhtar. And you'll see as he kind of like takes a moment to feel each of their throats, and he'll kind of notice the one that survived. It is important to me to find the ones who live, the ones who grow too old to be pale, dogs of the street. The ones who are important here live. The rest are refuse to be burned in the harvest. And you can kind of see this person feels no regret for the two pale dogs who lie dead on the street here. But the one who's alive still, kind of like almost referencing like there's serendipity behind him living. You would like to find information? You have found it. How can I help you? How can we deal? How can you come to realize that your people do not belong here?
The Davros is going to kind of, even though he's the one who killed one of these guys and he's killed other pale dogs, he kind of gonna shake his head a little bit in disgust at the this guy's clear kind of uh, lack of any sense of um, remorse or anything, and but also um, maybe realizing that he's in an awkward spot here with his companion down. Well, in the instant, I'm looking for information on the Enin. Figured you and your boys might know something about them. Figured I'd ask around, ask hard
Uh,
if
let
I
me
had to.
let me get a persuasion from you. See how persuasive you are as you kind of say this. You speak of the Enin. You know much, and perhaps I wonder if you understand how dangerous such words can be while you are on the wrong side of a negotiating table. What business do you have with the Enin? Because I foresee with you who help people are not in line with the Enin.
So it was a 4 on the persuasion roll.
Yeah.
So, but Davros is going to he'll kind of like spit, probably a little bit bloody, and shake his head again. And they have someone. I want them back. Simple as that.
The yen and deal in money. If you require someone back, it is not difficult to purchase when you desire a slave. And um I'm gonna insight check you as I say slave here. Are you trying to hide, say essentially that this is your son who you're talking about? Like, are you trying to hide the emotion, or are you still like in a rage, maybe even where the adrenaline is pumping that you're wearing it on your sleeve that you're talking about Dalton, your son? You know what I mean? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I think when he mentions slave and Davros is thinking he's like referring to Dalton as a slave. He is. I mean, he's not technically raging anymore. It's kind of faded from the immediate battle, but it's still, I think, going to be probably pretty clear on his face that he does not take kindly to that characterization. So it's um,
Gotcha. Yeah, so he'll basically be when you are searching for a slave, the Yenin are easy enough to find, but you are not searching for a slave. You hope to free someone from their servitude, and that can be even more expensive than to purchase the life of another. Jirath could put you in contact with the one you seek for a cost. What would it be worth to you to see this one who is seen in slavery?
we what are we talking? Gold? You want me to do
I have
something for
not
you?
dealt in such trivial things for a long time. I care not for coin. And you'll see his head kind of like cranes over. Perhaps the pale dogs would like your home, and for you to leave. How much would that be valued to your friends? It could have burnt, and now you could see it return. And this is where I'm actually going to roll it to see if he can figure out how close this person is. So at this point, let me have a deception to see how much you can hide when this is like kind of feeling out like how close is this person? It's probably not incredible, but
So 10.
gotcha. Yeah, so close enough that they basically have a solid idea it's family. But I don't think it's enough to really know whether it's like wife, son, brother. Um, but you can kind of see like at this point, like this person isn't talking about coin. They're right back to getting you out of the Warrens and the potential of getting your son back to have you be kind of a figurehead for the Twin Star Marauders leaving the Warrens behind.
So I think so. Davros initially is thinking when he's mentions home, he thinks like my home in the district. But then when he kind of clarifies like the fire could have taken it, then he that's when he realizes, oh, he means the Skinner. Um, Davros is going to he'll kind of shake his head again and well, if you can help me uh, get back this friend, I can do what I can to convince the others that perhaps a new base of operations would be best. But what assurances do I have that you'll hold up your end?
What assurances indeed that you would hold up yours. Girath and the Pale Dogs own this place. These wardens. They are our home. They are where we belong. The refuse of this city. You do not belong here any more than this one you searched for would belong in slavery. A slave is not a slave because people care for them. You can have the word of the mouth of Jirath that we will find your lost one, and you should make your plans to vacate this place. We will find yours, and you will relocate your guild hall and leave this place behind.
So the this kind of offered exchange is um, doesn't really sit right with Davros, but he's obviously desperate to get back Dalton. Um, so he's kind of willing to deal with the devil, and eventually he will kind of after a few kind of long moments he'll give a kind of a short sharp nod. Um, all right, I'll do what I can to convince the guild to seek out greener pastures, as it were. But if you play me, mouth of Girath, I will come back. I will not stop. The pale dogs are no more.
The pale dogs are larger than you can imagine. Our power is there to destroy you. Part of our guarantee is that you will be allowed to live. I will come in 2 days to meet with your reclusive leader of this guild, and we will treat with you then. When I have information about yours, we can solidify things in another meeting. And then when we are prepared, you can vacate this place for the last time when I bring your lost one to the Skinner. And effectively, I think at that point, unless you have any other thoughts, the mouth of Jiroth is going to basically take down information about Dalton. And he's going to ask you what he can find out. And kind of go from there, where he's going to, basically start tracking him down, and then he will come back in 2 days to kind of speak between you and like Kalimtas about Dalton, and that'll kind of give you guys like a final thought on what will happen here.
Yeah, so Davros is and kind of not sure he's made uh, a good deal, but he's desperate, so he will give the description and kind of pass along what information he's been able to obtain. He probably would try to leave out any kind of like he wouldn't like mention like Malchin's name or kind of how he's learned some of this stuff, but he would kind of tell him anything that he thought would be useful in tracking down Dalton.
Gotcha. Yeah. So for some level of try not to like cross the streams of having like scouts, guides, and porters searching for him, just as much as um potentially. And there goes my Bluetooth. So probably just on my speakers now. But just kind of gives you that like separated two different groups are kind of doing this search. Um, you're not necessarily locked into this as far as negotiations go. Um, it's the same type of thing as like I have the intention of having you all leave the Warrens behind, but that doesn't mean I'm going to write it that way. You guys have the choice, but it is the type of things where the Warrens are the pale dogs. You're going to go to war before you kind of thing, and that's effectively what you've learned here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like essentially kind of, yeah, no man's land, or um yeah.
Now, I feel like you have a little bit more information about the Pale Dogs and their crime syndication connections. Do you have any other information about that, like on hand, that you can think of about who the Pale Dogs serve?
Let me see if I have in my notes anywhere. I feel like, yeah, I learned a little bit about.
Because this, again, like everything is infinitely complicated inside of Tolis, but you basically got like a name and then a little bit of information about like two different sort of ways they serve other organizations. But that's one of the things to kind of keep in mind is like many organizations serve other organizations that are above them. And that's part of what you kind of would have picked up with meeting this person here. Um, but theoretically, I feel like this is what you were searching for. You can kind of return to the Crooked Skinner with Mukhtar at this point. But unless you had any other thoughts for the voice or the mouth of Zirath, he's going to effectively collect the one who's still alive and like walk away.
Yeah, I don't think Davros has anything else. Yeah, he will want to essentially bring Mukhtar's body back to the Skinnerd, and probably he'll want to pay for, some sort of either burial or cremation or whatever the typical rites are, or something like that.
Well,
Um,
there's two different things that you can do here. There's burial options. There's burial at sea. There's burial in the necropolis. But if you bury somebody in the necropolis, you want to cremate them so they don't come back as undead. But those are kind of the options that you really have.
um, okay. For now, he would probably just essentially bring him back to try and essentially carry him back to the Skinner, and maybe ask, maybe somebody knows if he had a preference or something, but otherwise would probably arrange for cremation and then burial in the or interment in the necropolis.
So, my bad. I was trying to write down like when I would have the mouth of Gireth kind of return to you guys there. So you want to return to the Skinner right now. You're essentially right next to it. You probably didn't walk much more than like 150 feet away from it before. So that doesn't take you long at all.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then you said you wanted to basically, once you got him back here, arrange to figure out like how you would inter him, like to cremate him, basically.
Yeah, basically, I mean, Davros will, offer to pay what it costs to. I don't know if there's like sort of like an organization or something that handles things like that, or if they can pay for um, some sort of like burial rights kind of thing. But he would essentially offer to pay that cost.
So returning to the Crooked Skinner, it's probably like less than like a half hour or 40 minutes has kind of gone by since you all left. And as you kind of like come back in through the front door, it's not going to take long for most of these people to like stop and recognize that you're carrying in the body of Mukhtar. Maybe you'll have somebody like I feel like Kiritoa just quickly coming to your aid simply as someone else with like the strength. Is someone who has kind of the voice of magic. They are effectively a bard, maybe coming to the aid to try to see if they can help. And you kind of have this like the guild almost kind of like collects around him. And I think you'd kind of come to the realization, maybe like bringing Mukhtar up into like this little private room right off of the balcony by Kalimtas, and effectively kind of like Kalimtas kind of like coming to you. Probably have like there still like somewhat testing like to see if there's any sort of healing to be done. And then basically having Kalimtas kind of like bring you in here to speak for a moment here. Um, and this is one of those things like I feel like there's a certain amount of it's viable to say we could role play this. I think a lot of it is perfectly fine to kind of like leave off for the recognition of like kind of moving into things for the future to actually figure out what we do. um I am not surprised that the pale dogs would claim to have tried to burn us out of this place. And perhaps everyone will decide this is a viable cost to return your son. As far as the fees to cremate Mukhtar, the guild is perfectly happy to pay those. I don't require you to do such things, but it is appreciated that you would care for your friend.
Well, I obviously, you know how badly I want Dalton back, but if you won't, if the guild decides they won't move, they will find some other way. But
I
from what
I had
I
I had hoped that the haunted house you all had found in the North Ward would be a suitable place for us to relocate to as a temporary lodging, with the effort of removing the threat there. It may still be significantly reduced in value when time comes about. Please do not question that your son's life is valuable to us. This place, the value is in the people. But yeah, again, like as far as I'm concerned, Kalimtas is not like sold on living in this place. It was always, in my opinion, meant to be a place to start you guys in a shit show so you could leave it. So my goal here is to put it before, at least a larger group of people to kind of make the initial decision. And that's all I'm really asking for because I don't want to railroad the group into it. And I know Davros has all the inclination in the world to do it. I want to let you convince other people to do it. But that's kind of like how I see it is that house is where you guys can relocate to in the North Ward. And that's until you can afford to buy a place in the Midtown, or until you create a place in Undercity. There's a lot of places the guild could move to. Technically, Kalimtas owns that little area where Dalton used to live. So you've got options like that.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and so yeah, so that would make Davros feel, a little bit better about things. Obviously, he'll try to convince the others if there's some resistance, and he'll offer to, we kind of left the that house not fully cleared, so he'll offer obviously to, maybe with some others try and take another run at it before we so we can actually move in there. But he will obviously be kind of grateful to Kalados and um, Yeah, and then he'll kind of, depending on what the other actual kind of players characters think about it. Obviously, Davros will they'll try to convince them. But like he's yeah, I agree. Definitely don't want to like kind of just like decide and railroad and let give obviously give them a voice in it.
We live a dangerous life. It is not for us to decide how long we go about these things. It's for the brother and sisterhood that we should all step forward and try to rise together. Mukhtar took great pleasure in assisting you just as much as joining you in battle. It is most unfortunate that we see one go today, but perhaps it is fortunate that we now have an avenue, a second avenue, that brings us closer to finding your son. The future is always in the youth. Um, I feel like Clintos is probably a little bit younger than Davros, but it is still kind of like that recognition, like as far as a father goes. Like you've got a little bit more inclination than a lot of these people, but he still is kind of like a father figure to like the guild itself. Um, so it's just kind of that weird level. But yeah, as far as things go here, I think it's solid to say we'll kind of reassess what goes on with um like how we go about moving on. If you were so inclined and needed to treat with it today, your son actually created a contact priest that he saved, and he's just going to kind of like flip through a little book that he has on hand. And I'm going to look up the priest who, at some point, Dalton saved that girl and brought back to the priest in the Temple District.
Right. Yeah. I'm forgetting their names off the top of my head.
I think that might be Priest Mikhail Ambrosov. Yep, and then Kyle Jin. I feel like that was the girl, the
Yep, that
haunted
sounds right.
manse. Yeah. So, your son assisted a young woman who, a parishioner of priest Ambrosov, in St. Darius's chapel in the Temple District. If you go there and request the services to cremate our brother, I will pay you the gold that it costs you to do this. Um, you don't have to actually play that out, but if you wanted to give Davros a chance to kind of like delve a little bit into Dalton's life, I think that's a potential if you wanted to go into that. Honestly, at this point, just as kind of a like random happenstance, like I rolled a d20, got a 20, and rolled a d100 and got like a 95. That's why that character like showed up there at the end of that fight. Um, it was just like really good luck kind of thing where the dice kind of determined it. Do you have any other thoughts, like what you would like to do with Davros? We can easily play for another hour, if not longer. But do you have any thoughts on what you would like to do? I mean, we could
Uh,
just as easily like bury Mukhtar as not like to be callous about it, but like go slay some rats. There's a lot of different options that you could go into. Go investigate. I think it's kind of weird now, but go investigate the Enin in the dock district.
yeah, so I think Davros he will go and kind of like as Kalantar suggested, kind of seek to arrange for the burial. He would probably spend a little bit of time, um, you know, if Kelvin or I guess with or if the priest, if either of them are there, just kind of asking. kind of general questions about Dalton. Um, but
Gotcha.
not
So
really like delving too deeply and like not really like kind of interrogating them, more just almost kind of like he wants to hear a nice story kind of about something good his kid did.
so yeah, let's go with two different things here. We'll have you um I guess it's probably pretty callous to say walking out of the Warrens with Mukhtar in your hands, but I also feel like a wheelbarrow would be even more callous. So if you were to take somebody with you to take Mukhtar over into the Temple District, who do you think you would take like from the guild? Do you think this is like where you go to Eowyn, who kind of like worked with Mukhtar and was the other person searching for Dalton? Would you take like uh the scrawny wizard old man? Like what would you think of as another sidekick basically at this point?
Yeah, I think maybe Erwin, since the two of them seem to kind of know each other, work together. Um, Obviously, Davros will offer to essentially kind of shoulder the load for the most part. Um, but yeah, I think probably Erwin would be his kind of initial choice.
Gotcha. Let me have you roll a d12 as you and Eowyn kind of like carry Mukhtar out of the Warrens.
6.
Gotcha. So yeah, when you are initially, maybe this is like an hour or two later. It's probably like kind of high noon at this point when you're leaving the Crooked Skinner, and the two of you are kind of crossing out and trying to make your way out of the Warrens. Oh, I should have had you roll a survival for you as well. Can you roll a survival? You can do this with advantage.
18.
Yeah, solid. It takes you like 10 or 15 minutes to get out of the Warrens. Gonna say vastly with Eowyn's help. Mostly because I would say if you're shouldering most of the burden, you're probably like the one walking backwards, and she's like carrying his feet, as you guys are like, you know, carrying his body kind of between you type of thing. Um, yeah, I think we've got him on a tabletop, so you almost have him on like a gurney kind of thing. I think that sounds way better than like a limp body between two adults like walking through the city. So you guys kind of like head through the Warrens. You'll notice on occasion that there are indeed people like kind of looking off towards you. None of them are paying you all a whole lot of attention. This is probably the least that you will notice having ever walked through the Warrens. Least amount of pale dogs that you've ever really noticed. It's one of those things you don't know whether it's that you've already made a deal, that it's already kind of like gone through their ranks so thoroughly, or beyond that. Roll a perception for me.
2.
Crushing it. Yeah. So as you guys head out, make your way into kind of the guild district for a moment, cross over the grasping falls into the into midtown, and kind of like going through some of the main streets to stay like side streets, even carrying the body, like it can be a lot to bump into other people, whereas like the goal is to kind of stay on the main street, so there's at least a little bit more space for this. And the actual temple for St. Gustav's, oh, I guess I could have actually looked up where St. Gustav's is, but I feel like part of what we said was the idea that like St. Gustav's was on kind of the like southeastern side of the temple district, and kind of presents itself a little bit closer to the general locale where you guys are coming from. But I am going to look it up real quick and actually see where St. Gustav's is. I may have picked a temple that's not even in the temple district. Is St. Gustav's in the Guildsman district, maybe?
I don't remember.
Oh, wait, it's St. Darius, isn't it?
So it looks like St.
Yeah,
Gustav's is
St.
in.
Darius is in the Guildsman district. My bad.
Okay, then it looks like St. Gustav's Chapel is in Midtown.
Yeah, I should have known St. Gustav's. That's the one that's right across the street from um, Dover Square. So yes, St. Darius's church is right next to the fire station and the guardhouse there. It's that 306 off of Vaterest Street. So it's actually a pretty easy path. A lot of where you actually have to travel is what burned when you went to look in on Ninor and you found the slotty that like seemed to have caused all of that like burning. A lot of that area was actually the fresh fire in this area that kind of leads almost in that direction. But you can return to the Guildsman district to find uh, Saint Darius's church and Priest Mikhail. When you arrive there, part of what you want to do is um, well, when you ask for Calgin, I'll have you roll then. But when you arrive, I don't think I'll have a map of this chapel in particular. It's probably far more of a like almost like working kind of like building rather than like a fancy chapel that would be in like the temple district. But otherwise, then other than it fits into the Guildsman district, it's stonework, nice and tall, would still have like a bell that like rings the hours. But upon arriving, it's got, traditional kind of like pews set up through the center and more or less few minutes of opening the doors. You would kind of see as somebody eventually kind of like walks through in priest vestments and would pretty quickly notice the two of you like maybe if you like walk in and it's empty and you kind of take their body up to the front of the chapel like under the light of Lothian that's like kind of shining through like these stained glass windows, you eventually see as like this priest comes out of the back area, head bowed, vestments kind of covering their body, like mid kind of 40s, maybe a little bit like late 40s, and they're kind of very reserved until they actually recognize like you're not just here to worship. There's somebody who's actually passed, and uh, hello, friends. I'm sorry to see you are at a loss. My name is Brother Amrazov. If there's anything that I can do for you, please ask, and may Lothian deliver. Blessings for you both. Any kind of thoughts as you will basically are introduced to Priest Ambrosov?
Yeah, so Davros will kind of first thing he would do is kind of at that question he would um he'd be you know respectful. He's kind of not particularly devout, but he does, he worships Lothian, and he's kind of has a, you know the kind of the typical kind of respect for the clergy. So he would kind of go ahead and explain, like, the Mukhtar, and they're hoping to, you know, kind of see to his burial. Um, and then he would also, Devers would also mention then that once the uh, if you don't mind, Father, once the preparations are made, I would like to ask you a few questions. I understand uh, you had met my son, Dalton, and he'll then kind of he won't go into anything about how like Dalton's been, missing, or any of that, but he'll essentially mention, like, I'd like to ask you a few, some questions about your interactions.
You wear the same visage as Dalton. Yes, I do recognize you. You seemed quite familiar. I believe we met each other 2, maybe 3 months ago now. He saved one of our parishioners, dear to the church, dear to Lothian, from some of the plague folk below.
I am glad to hear it. Glad that he was able to help this parishioner. Fortunately, he's gotten into a bit of trouble himself lately. So if you could pray for him, Father, be appreciative. I'm hoping I can help him myself, but it hurt.
It would be my pleasure. And remember, Lothian is a lord of action. Help those who help themselves, and the light will shine through. I think it is safe to say, as you strive for your son, so too will the light of Lothian rise beneath, uh, rise above the horizon, and bring the light of day to you and yours, as he brought the light of Kaljin back to the city. So too you can bring him back now.
Davros will kind of nod gratefully, and at some point, probably after this is kind of done, he is going to offer a essentially a donation, kind of in um, he will take up Kellum Toss's essentially saying like he's going to pay for the burial, but he wants to make his own donation. So he is going to um, kind of once the practical things are done, like the preparations and the talking, he will essentially offer 10 gold donation.
Would you care to have your friend buried in a more mundane location? An individual grave? Does he require a headstone? Will he have those that visit him?
I think a headstone would be he deserves such, and he'll look to Erwin to just to make sure that he's not kind of overstepping, but he will. That sounds like he'll agree that that seems like maybe a way to kind of honor Mukhtar.
We are agents of the hunt. Mukhtar and I were far more true to the necessities of life. You are welcome to spend money on a headstone if you would desire to honor him thus. And they kind of like look back to the priest. As far as I know, cremation and a peaceful rest where he will not rise among the dead of the necropolis. That is all Mukhtar could hope for. And perhaps, if some of his ashes can be saved, I can apply him to perhaps my blade, that he can taste blood. Would be good. Taste the hunt. But yeah, like essentially, as far as I would say, go with the idea of he was a pragmatist. Like he didn't really view much beyond life was about living. in the end, that's the end. Anything that you carry on beyond that is on you. He's done with it now. So it's kind of up to you. Effectively, burial costs can be as simple as like a silver to be buried, 5 gold for a headstone, 10 gold for like an individual burial plot, and then um, there's other choices beyond that. But I'd say something like 5 silver to have him cremated. If you wanted to do like cremation and a headstone, you could basically do something like maybe like 6 gold, kind of like have a headstone that's just there in the necropolis, but it's otherwise not necessarily like taking up the plot where a body could fit. It's quite literally just like a named marker to represent like this is where his ashes are. And then I
Gotcha.
like the idea that like Erwin would almost like use part of his ashes as like a blackening, like maybe some of his bone is like a calcifier on like her weapons, so it's like he's still hunting with her.
Okay, yeah. So kind of hearing that, Davros will kind of defer to Erwin, and basically kind of in that case, I think perhaps no headstone is needed, and he will otherwise kind of, yeah, so arrange for the cremation and kind of retaining some of the ashes like Erwin requested. Um, so he'll pay like the 5 silver for that. He'll still make the other donation, but he won't. Um, he's not going to like insist on a headstone, or if that doesn't seem like Mukhtar would care. So
Well, you are more than welcome to return for his remains. I can have him cremated as soon as early this evening, and we will um yeah, I'd say like say the 5 silver includes like a small like brass jar to kind of like put his remains in. I can't think what the actual cremation things are called, but I feel like that's a solid like idea is that includes a object to place the ashes within.
it's like a little, like almost like a miniature urn, or some sort of
Yes,
like
there we go. Urn's the right word.
or almost like a, I guess it wouldn't technically be a reliquary, but like a little box with like for some of the ashes, almost kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like reliquary is for like a saint. I think it
Yeah, I think
usually
it's
assumes.
technically only for like relics. Yeah, I think that's where kind of where the name comes from. But
But
I don't know if there's like a more general name for just kind of like a, yeah, almost not like a keepsake box, but kind of, yeah.
yeah, urn's the right thing though, because I'm basically thinking like a metal jar. But I do think there are other ways of doing it where it's not necessarily in what almost looks like a vase kind of thing. Um, and then yeah, like maybe Eowyn will kind of like respond like, "Well, I will return as soon as I can this evening. There is no rush. When I do come back, I can stay until he is ready. Perhaps, um, maybe like basically saying something to the effect of like, staying the night will not be a poor use of time." So yeah, I'd say if you still do like a 10 gold donation to the chapel, to the actual church, that is perfectly fine. But 10 gold, 10 silver, that kind of satisfies that. Uh, and that basically pay for his kind of burial.
Okay, yep, sounds good. Um,
I know it would sadden her to hear, but if you were not busy, Collagen often comes in when she finishes work in the afternoons. She would probably be excited to see you, even if only to hear a word about your son. I don't know if it is best for her. She struggles, but he does mean a lot to her, and I know she would care to know what has happened to him.
I would like to meet her, and I will refrain from too much detail if you think that seems preferable. But yes, I would like to uh, meet her, and I can I have no particular need to be uh, anywhere else at the moment.
Yeah, let me have you roll 2d4.
Five.
So most of the day is going to progress by, to where you're starting to see the shadow of the spire is now like drawn across the entirety of the city, and you can almost see like the evening sun is casting across the guild district, and you can like see the darkness like a cloud almost. That's just a little bit north of you all, where you're far enough south in the city to not get covered by the shadow of the spire. And you're just kind of like hanging out inside of this chapel, depending on how patient the two of you kind of like sit. Um, Awen is certainly there if you wanted to have conversation, but is otherwise kind of like silently in like a sort of like state of prayer over Mukhtar's body. Before around, let me actually roll this real quick. I'm gonna say around like 4 or so hours into the day, the priest is going to come out and actually kind of like apologizing, like, I'm very sorry. I have everything prepared, and we are going to start the cremation. If you would like to say your final goodbyes, and he'll basically allow Erwin like that last chance, effectively taking the body back to the crematory. They do like the ritual practice of cremating him, and in that last hour is when Kalijin actually arrives effectively to um, Erwin kind of at the front of the chapel, kind of like sitting beneath like the last like light coming in through that stained glass window, and you can be wherever you would like to be as she kind of like walks in to, like probably like say like 4 rows of pews kind of walk up through the chapel. So you don't necessarily have to be directly in front of the main set of doors. But like during a day when like nothing is actually happening, you probably only have like one set of doors opened into the center of the like chapel, whereas like if it was a big day, Guild District is a huge district, they could open like 3 sets of doors that has like an aisle through those 4 sets of pews. But effectively she opens up and can see Erwin ahead of her at the front of the chapel, and then wherever you would like to be. And you can kind of recognize like later in the day you've been expecting her to arrive at some point here. Young woman kind of fits the bill of, I think I said like mid-20s kind of thing. uh yeah, late teen, early 20s. Didn't really give her much more of a description than that. I feel like she was kind of like shorter, kind of small framed. I tend to say like redhead or like cherry apple blonde kind of thing. But she kind of like walks in and just, what do you think you do as she walks in? Probably just to pray to herself almost.
Yeah, so I think Davros would have been, he might have made some kind of light conversation at a couple points with like Erwin, but otherwise probably um, kind of giving her some space, and maybe so kind of sitting by himself, kind of lost in his own thoughts for a lot of the time. Um, when he sees the young kind of woman walking in, he get yeah, like he said, kind of gets a sense that this might be Kaljin. So I think he would stand up, um, kind of approach her, maybe a bit like tentatively, and maybe just kind of um, like when he's about like 15-20 feet or so away from her, be like uh, Kaljin.
Stopping there. When you like approach towards her, she's going to kind of like look towards you. Almost has like a quick little like double take before she's already saying like Dalton as you approach. Or would you have introduced yourself as Dalton? It probably would have been Dem at that point. So she probably like goes to look at you, and like in the moment you're like whispering her name, she's already like saying them? Is that you? And like almost like reaching out to hug you before she's about to like grasp you and like stops realizing like you're not who she thinks you are. I you you know me, you look like a friend of mine. Hello.
Yes, Dalton, Dem, as you know him, uh, my son, I'm Davros.
So with
So,
the my son, she'll like just leap back onto you like and grasp you like in a big hug.
so he'll kind of like very awkwardly kind of return it, like he's not a hugger. But
Your
he
son
will.
saved me from the rat man. You are so wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, and Father. Sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but he would mention the name. He said that Tim had provided some assistance. So some other business brought me here, but I was hoping to uh, speak with you about him. You have a bit of time, and he'll probably he won't like go into detail yet, but depending on how kind of perceptive she is, she might notice, kind of the um, he's a little I don't know, sad or like
So while you're kind of like thinking over this and like kind of like speaking to her, we, of course, we can speak. I've prayed for your son's well being. Since he saved me, he's always in my prayers. I let me go light these candles, and then we can step outside to speak. And she just kind of like looks away and like almost with like a forlorn kind of like last little grip of your hand as she like kind of like starts to walk towards the front of the chapel. She'll kind of like walk past where like Eowyn is, like towards a couple of like these like the typical kind of like candle stands. And she'll like just take out two little like kind of clearly handmade candles that she kind of like dips over to light from the other flames and kind of like places them in. You see as she kind of like ducks her head for a few moments and then she'll like turn around, big beaming smile, come back over to you and kind of like bring you outside of the chapel to like step back out onto the stairs like overlooking the street of Vadarast Street, and she kind of like almost just kind of sitting on say like one of the top perches. You can see that there are like groups of people who are out here. There's probably starting to be other people in the chapel now as it gets like a little later in the traditional day here. But she kind of like will sit down and almost like look for you to sit next to her. uh Maybe like out like a little bit of like almost like a whey bread or like a raisin bread kind of thing, and just kind of like breaks off like a little bit of like a morsel to eat. And she just kind of like beams at you just smiling like, oh, what would you like to talk about?
so Davros will kind of follow her outside and take a seat and kind of seeing like the kind of the beaming smile. He's kind of hesitant, but he will eventually he will be like kind of maybe like again kind of awkwardly maybe kind of like putting his hand which will probably kind of like dwarf hers kind of like over her hand um uh well as it happens Dalton Dem has been missing a few weeks. Um, when the father said that you had he had helped you, having been here myself, I thought perhaps I would speak with you, and I would like to hear how you came to know him. And the father mentioned that it would be best to uh, let you know um, uh, what had happened. Him hoping to have him back soon, but it seems that his hopefulness may have landed him in some trouble.
Roll a D100 for me.
45.
I am sorry. I cannot be sad with the news that your son is missing from your perspective. I feel myself no further from them than I was before. I don't I don't believe that his danger is great. If he is in any danger at all, are you sure he is just not busy doing other things that he is not deemed worthy of telling you?
Davros is going to look, probably like a confused, somewhat confused kind of look, kind of over his face, kind of brow will furrow as she says this. And what what makes you think that, if you don't mind my asking? You haven't heard from him, have you?
I,
Seen him?
I I have not. He um I don't believe you visited her maybe except for like a week or so after you guys initially saved her. I feel like it was probably saved her and then she's kind of been off on herself still. Does that
Yeah,
sound right to you?
I think Dem like maybe in like the week after he had spent some of his downtime in the area, trying like at some of the taverns, trying to after he kind of got the sense that there was maybe something going on with between them and the priest. But I'm pretty sure he never actually went back and like visited her or spoke with her again.
Gotcha. Okay, that's about what I was thinking. Yeah, so uh I don't rightly have a reason to tell you that I know. I have not seen him since he saved me, but it is true that he has been in my prayers. Every day I speak to Lothian for him, and every day I feel the same warmth in my heart from the moment he opened the prison gates and released me from the darkness. I cannot tell you why, only that I feel. And I do not feel your son is in danger. I know that not everybody believes what I say, but I have overheard some of the priests speak in ways that they understand that the destiny of this city rests upon a very few, and those who are marked for it. They know these things, and I believe Father Ambrosov is speaking of me believe the feeling that I feel is this recognizing the city, the fate of us all, is close to my heart, and your son is there. I do not believe that he can be in danger.
Davros will give a probably kind of unconvincing, kind of almost like sad smile, and just I'm like, I hope you were right, and thank you for your prayers. When I find him, I will be sure to have him stop by and speak to you himself. And he's kind of, you can tell he's kind of trying to convince himself that everything is going to kind of work out, or that, um, but not probably not very successfully. But he's trying to kind of keep up, kind of, he doesn't want to um, upset, kind of the woman. He's almost kind of like, okay, let her have her kind of, wishful thinking kind of thing. Um, but he otherwise is, yeah, like, kind of trying to play along.
He'll kind of like, patting your shoulder. Like, I know it'd be uncomfortable, but like a reaffirming kind of hug. And when you are reunited with them, don't hesitate to find me. I too would like to see him again. And perhaps we can share a joyous day in recognizing the true wonder of Lothian and reassure you that Lothian will help us as we search for that help and as we do what we can to help ourselves.
Davros will, nod again. I think he's also going to ask her, probably trying to be somewhat kind of not knowing, if she wants to, kind of how much she wants to talk about it, but essentially asking her if she recalls essentially kind of where they came back up from the kind of where they came back up to the surface, or kind of the general area that Dem had rescued her, because he's almost thinking, um, it's gonna be at least a couple days before the mouth of uh, Firath.
Oh
Um,
lordy. I wanna say that was sewers near where Dem found the crack into the Bane Warrens. So vaguely sewers in, around what is it, like Vanguard Street and like Smoke Street. I feel like we kind of called Dem's house almost like where the S of Smoke Street was, like that blue house that he was in, like an alley maybe between there. So it's like close to where you guys are at St. This is not St. Gustav's, St. Darius's Chapel. So like if you look almost like directly south of that, you should see Smoke Street is like a main, like southeasterly street. And I wanted to say Dem was between Vanguard and Smoke when we gave him access to that like underground like crack that he slipped into that led to the Bane Warrens. And I feel like that session you went into the sewers to see if there was another entrance in the sewers or if that crack seemed to be isolated.
yeah, I think because I think at the time we went into the sewers where we rescued Calajan, that was the one I think where Chase had played, and we um yeah, that sounds, I don't
Yeah, that
recall
sounds right.
exactly.
Because I don't
uh
think you really told him exactly why you wanted to be in the sewers. You left it for the rat tails. But I think part of the mission was also for you with Dem to try to figure out, like, is this find like isolated, or do I have to like try to protect it and shut it off to a more public audience kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that that sounds right.
So
But
yeah,
essentially,
I
like
think
Davros is thinking, like, okay, I just want to, go and like blow off steam and kill some, kill some rats, and you know, um, they almost be like, go where like, go where Dalton went, and um, while he's waiting for kind of things to play out with the tail dogs and the crooked Skinner and all that.
I I think we came up from the sewers on Smoke Street. I it's not, and like as she's like trying to explain where Smoke Street is, you as somebody who's from the Guilds district, like not gonna be confusing at all to know you're right next to the main like thoroughfare connection to Smoke Street. And she just kind of like leans down and just like, I think we came up along the northern side of Smoke Street, maybe near Draper's Row. I didn't pay much attention to it then, but when he offered to bring me back here, or back to my home, I told him here, and we were here at St. Darius's chapel in no time. I think Smoke Street. Smoke Street and Draper's. Yes, so I'd say you could probably isolate that to like say two or three like sewer grates, that like actual entrances into the sewer. If you wanted to be a little safer, you could enter in on Draper's and try to make your way to the one that you would guess on Smoke Street. So you're not popping in on like a more major street. Or you could try to do the same on like Vanguard or Dead Orc Lane. That's a good road name. You know what I mean? If you wanted to try to be a little more sneaky about where you entered, you've got some of those other options that could give you a way to say, look, I'm going to distance myself from where I want to go, but see if I can get to that same spot.
Yeah, I think he'd probably, yeah, maybe not go to the like the main thoroughfare, so probably not Smoke Street, but if there was one on like Dead Orc Lane or um, one of the other kind of side streets, Draper's Row, maybe go there with the idea of kind of then kind of making his way towards kind of that more central area once he's underground. Um,
You want to spend a few minutes killing a few more rats? You got some health left still?
uh, Yes, well, so I imagine he would have been able to get a short rest while we were waiting for Calgian
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you all again for tuning in to the Dice Never Lie Gaming Network. We should be coming back to you with something this weekend. I'm not sure if we'll be playing Saturday or Sunday. I do know we have a planned session returning to the Goblin Haunted House with Davros and perhaps a few of our other players, including Vabuza and I believe either Jinx or Seraph, depending on who that player decides to bring. But otherwise, if we have a session coming up on Saturday or Sunday, it'll be showing up on Twitch. Otherwise, you all be well. Don't forget to check us out with Dice Never Lie on Twitch, here on YouTube, or if you would like to check out our Discord and come discuss if you would like to join a game. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Have a great week here. Is it Thursday yet?